Hello friends, I am a storyteller and today I will take you on a mysterious tour through the dark streets of this city. Before we begin, if you are watching this video looking for a peaceful sleep, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That is the most precious gift, giving me more motivation to continue telling stories now and then. Close your eyes, relax and prepare yourself to listen to tonight's story. I remember the cold of the night biting my skin as I walked on the empty streets, the cobblestone walkways winding under the dim moonlight, the uneven shadows falling on the ground. My breath came out in thin mists in the cold air, and the stillness of the night made me feel like the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to slither from the dark corners. I felt an unusual silence. It was like stalking, a creepy feeling that I couldn't explain. But I didn't let fear overwhelm me. I told myself that this was just another night, a familiar tour through the ancient neighborhoods, an opportunity to share with you the stories I had collected over the years. But that night, something was different. A prickly feeling ran down my spine, causing me to constantly look back, as if someone was watching me from behind. My group consisted of 5 people, and they were all excited and full of curiosity, although they seemed a little nervous about what was about to happen. I could feel the fear in their eyes. Anyway, I'm the master of horror stories here, and I'll lead them through haunted places, locations that have been the scene of strange and haunting crimes. We began walking across the cracked sidewalks, our footsteps echoing in the quiet space. While I was talking about the city's dark history, I couldn't help but feel like something wasn't right. The air seemed thicker, and as I continued to tell the ghostly legends, a strange buzzing sound appeared in my ears, as if a flock of insects were lurking somewhere around. A suffocating feeling enveloped me, making me feel like I was in the middle of a nightmare. While I was telling a story about a haunted house, I suddenly noticed a blurry shape appearing out of the corner of my eye. At first, I thought it was just an illusion, maybe the weak light of the street lights. But no, that thing was unlike any shadow I had ever seen before. It slid strangely, almost like a large animal lurking in the darkness. I felt my heart pounding, not from excitement, but from a vague fear that I couldn't explain. One of the group asked me a question, and when I turned to look, the figure had disappeared. I tried to give them a forced smile and answer them, but I couldn't stop the cold feeling in my heart. I continued to lead them, but with every step I felt like something wasn't right. It felt like something was watching us, moving quietly among the shadows. My eyes kept flicking over my shoulder, and I just wished I could see it, but every time I turned around, I couldn't confirm its presence anymore. But then, as we reached a hidden corner, I noticed it appeared again. This time, it wasn't a small animal like I thought. It was larger, had a more strange shape, and was unlike any creature I had ever known. It could only be called a shadow, but this shadow seemed alive, moving with us at a strange speed, as if waiting for something. My heart pounded, cold sweat began to break out, and I couldn't help but feel that I was facing something beyond human understanding. I tried to continue the conversation, even though my panic was increasing. My group didn't notice anything. They were still engrossed in listening and were unaware of the presence of something creepy following us. I tried not to let them detect my anxiety, but I couldn't shake that feeling myself. As we continued walking towards the abandoned houses, I started thinking about legends about entities that attack people through fear. Stories I hear in my work where fear feeds strange creatures that have no discernible appearance. And tonight, I feel like I'm becoming a part of that story. The feeling of unease grew, and I couldn't help but think that something terrible was waiting for me in the dark. That night, I wasn't just the storyteller for the group. I'm living in a horror story that I still can't explain. That feeling kept me up all night, unable to sleep, and I hope you, the person listening, can also feel that fear through each of my words. While others remained carefree, unaware of that presence, I could clearly feel every beat of my heart in my chest. Each beat sounds like a warning, a silent alarm. But strangely, I still couldn't take my eyes off that figure. It stood there, silent and motionless, neither moving forward, nor retreating. But the surrounding air seemed tense and heavy. I had the feeling it was waiting, for a signal from me, just a small movement, to confirm that it really existed. The surrounding darkness seemed thicker, and I could hear wheezing sounds, not from the people in the group, but from itself. Yes, I was sure there was a sound like the breathing of a creature standing right behind me. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but I couldn't. Cold sweat began to drip from my forehead, my hand still shaking holding the flashlight. I wanted to scream, wanted to warn everyone, but my lips were frozen. My group remained calm, they didn't realize what was happening. One person in the group even laughed and said I looked a bit tired. I could only force a smile, trying to hide the panic inside. But really, I feel like I'm standing on a fragile bridge, where even a small mistake can send me falling into an endless abyss. We continued walking, and I tried to stay calm, leading the group to the next points in the journey. But that shadow, something I couldn't name, still followed us, hovering in the darkness, seemingly watching our every move, waiting for some mistake. When we reached a deserted area, I couldn't bear it any longer. I took a deep breath, trying to concentrate, but my eyes drifted through the darkness again. And then, I saw it. That shape was no longer a shadow. It had grown into a giant creature, with long wings, skin as shiny as plastic, and eyes as bright red as two lamps. A feeling of fear welled up inside me, and I blurted out, "Run." But, everything was too late, when I realized that there was nowhere to hide. The group members turned to look at me with surprise and confusion. But then they also felt something was wrong. A strange noise, like a loud thump on the sidewalk, made them turn around. And when they saw that thing, fear immediately spread, turning them into motionless dolls. This is not a legendary story anymore. This is the truth. Strange sounds echoed around us, and the shadow grew larger and larger, its shape becoming clearer and clearer, like a creature that did not belong to this world. Every time I turned to look at it, I felt a cold blast of air blow over me, as if I were facing death. That shadow moved unnaturally, its wings stretched out as if wanting to swallow everything. I know that this is the moment when everything I've said so far is no longer a joke. My voice was gone, and I couldn't say anything anymore. Everything became blurred, it seemed like nothing could be saved. But I still tried to hold the flashlight, shining it towards that terrible creature. The flashlight only made it clearer, and I felt every beat of my heart like waves in a dark sea. I turned around and looked at the panicked faces of my group, but they were all frozen, unable to move. That shadow was getting closer, and I knew that if I didn't do something immediately, we would never leave here. Finally, I screamed, my voice barely escaping from fear, but there was nothing else I could do. The darkness swallowed us more and more, and I felt myself being sucked into something inexplicable, as if our lives were slowly disappearing. This is not a story just to be told anymore. This is a warning to all those who dare to go into darkness without understanding that darkness never forgives. Finally, I shouted. My voice was hoarse, as if muffled by the very fear that imprisoned me. But I couldn't do anything else, the darkness was slowly swallowing us all. I felt like I was being sucked into an invisible, inexplicable vortex, as if my life was being drained little by little, disappearing into an unknown void. This is no longer a story to tell for fun anymore. This is a wake-up call, for anyone who has ever dared to step into the darkness without understanding that the darkness never forgives. And then, I could move again. But the terror still wrapped tightly around me, every step seemed weighed down by thousands of invisible souls. I forced myself to stand up, my hands still shaking. Every heartbeat in my chest is a silent scream, impossible to name, impossible to stop. My heart was pounding as I walked towards the car, each step heavy, like I was walking in a nightmare with no end in sight. And when I opened the car door, it felt like someone was watching me from behind, in the darkness, seemingly rising from the cracks of this city. The car door made a jingling sound, as if an invisible force was emphasizing its presence. I quickly jumped into the car and slammed the door. But as I sat there, my breathing was still rapid, my mind couldn't get rid of those terrible images. I looked around, looking for some sign to prove that I was still awake, but every light, every shadow, made me feel like I was confused between reality and fiction. I knew I couldn't just stand there forever. I need to leave here, but the feeling of being trapped still won't let go. How could I forget that shadow, which had grown from a small form to a giant creature, with long wings and glowing eyes, a creature that did not belong to this world? Is it chasing me? Did I really see it, or was it all just part of the paranoia I had built up in my mind? I tried to dispel those thoughts, but a small voice in my head kept repeating, "It's not a hallucination. It's what you called out with your stories. You fed it with fear." This feeling, this inexplicable feeling, still follows me. I know, no matter how hard I try to hide, something dark will always be present within me, a part of me. And I also realized, I can't escape it. A voice inside me said I wasn't just a storyteller anymore. I became a part of that story, and this story has no end. I closed my eyes, trying to find peace in a world I no longer had control over. But then, the cold feeling came again. That shadow, even though I couldn't see it, I knew it was still there, waiting for a moment of my weakness to rise again. I clung to the steering wheel, the faint light from the streetlights shining through the window onto my face, making me feel like a ghost in the very city I once told stories about. Now, I cannot be sure whether I am still a storyteller or have become a part of the story, where darkness never lets go. And I know, no matter if I leave, or try to forget, I will never escape that ghost. I held tightly to the steering wheel. The faint light from the street lamps passed through the glass window, falling on my face quietly and coldly. In that moment, I felt like a ghost wandering through the city that I had told ghost stories about. But now, I'm no longer sure, am I still the storyteller, or have I become a part of the story itself? A part of darkness that never lets go of anyone who accidentally touches it. I know. Even if I leave, even if I try to forget, I will never escape what has followed me. In that wooden house, a seemingly peaceful place, strange sounds always echoed, from somewhere in the darkness. The walls seemed to breathe, in sync with my heartbeat, and each breath made the air heavier, thicker. That feeling can't be named. But it exists. It was as if something was lurking, hiding right behind the darkness, waiting for a moment of my inattention, to get closer. I no longer sleep peacefully. I'm no longer truly alone. And maybe I will never be myself again. Every night, I feel the silence surrounding me like a cold, heavy blanket. Even though I tried to act calm, the noises continued, becoming more and more distinct. Sometimes there were hissing sounds from outside the window, as if someone was standing outside, listening to my every move. Other times there were crunching sounds, like someone dragging heavy feet across the floor. Each time, I woke up startled, my heart pounding, unable to understand the cause of those noises. Then there are nights, when I try to fall asleep, a feeling of suffocation and difficulty breathing covers me. Even though the windows were tightly closed, the air in the room still seemed heavier than usual, as if something invisible was lurking somewhere, looking at me from the darkness. I tossed and turned in bed, unable to find a comfortable position. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt something silently staring at me, like a pair of invisible eyes in the dark. That small, dark room became more and more a place where I could not avoid the haunting thoughts of shapes lurking in the darkness. From night to night, I gradually felt its closeness. I can't lie to myself anymore, something lives within these walls, it has entered my mind, become a part of me, like a nightmare that cannot be awakened. I remember the stories I told, the stories I thought were just fiction, the horrifying shapes I imagined to make the tours more exciting. But now, those shapes are no longer imaginary. They have become real, more vivid than ever. I feel like I'm gradually becoming a part of the story I created. And that shadow, that shape, it has never left me. Last night, I felt something again, a small noise, but enough to wake me up. I woke up in the middle of the night, and that feeling, the feeling of being watched, came back. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding, my eyes wide open, looking into the darkness. I tried not to think about it, but I couldn't. That shadow, I know it's there, I just can't see it. Then I felt a slight movement in the air, a change so small I could have easily missed it. But I know, it is waiting, watching, waiting for me to become inattentive again, once again for me to repeat my stories. And I understand that when I tell those stories, I not only make myself afraid, but also allow it to live again, to make it stronger. So, I stopped telling scary stories. I kept them inside, as a way to not give more strength to fear. But I know, it's just a self-deception. Because once fear is planted in the mind, it will take root and grow silently in the dark. And that shadow, that shape, became a part of me. A part one cannot deny. I can't forget. The sound from the kitchen utensils echoed like a wordless song, sad and tired. The air in the room became heavy, a mixture of the smell of food and the smell of mold seeping from the old walls. I try to live as usual. Try to forget. But every time I stand in this kitchen, under the yellow light and tired, I feel something is not right. The shadows in the corners of the room are no longer a lack of light. They played around me, silently, patiently. Like someone was watching every move. Don't look away. Don't leave. And I know. I'm not truly alone anymore. As I was stirring the pot of soup, a gentle sound reached my ears again, like a noise from within the boards of the house. I turned around, my heart pounding again, but nothing strange. Everything was quiet again. However, I couldn't suppress the creepy feeling in my heart. The feeling as if someone is still hiding in the dark, waiting for a moment to reveal themselves. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, trying to convince myself that all I heard was the sound of the wind blowing through the door, or a reflection of my imagination playing tricks on me. As the outdoor light gradually faded and the night sky enveloped the house, I felt fear invade me again. Every night, I couldn't get rid of that inexplicable feeling, as if an invisible force was following me. The walls of the wooden house, although old and rusty, still seemed to contain some secret that I could not yet understand. The silence of this night, unlike other normal nights, made me feel even more scared. I knew I couldn't hide forever, but I still tried to maintain a calm appearance, even though inside, confusion had almost completely taken over. Then one night, while I was sitting on a chair in the living room, suddenly a strong wind blew through the window, blowing open the old curtains. I stood up startled, my eyes scanning the dark space of the house. Just for a moment, I saw a blurry figure flash out the window. I walked closer to the door, my heart beat faster, but when I opened the door, I only saw the dim light of the streetlight shining down on the yard and an empty space. There's no one. It feels like someone standing outside the window hasn't let me go. I turned around, my eyes scanning the hidden corners of the room, and then I felt a chill run down my spine. Once again, I heard a gentle sound, like the sound of scratching from within the boards. The sounds came closer, as if someone was moving within the very walls of the house, following my every step. Unable to bear it any longer, I rushed into the bedroom, closed the door and leaned my back against the board, trying to regain composure. That night, I couldn't sleep. Even though I was tired, I could only lie there, eyes wide open in the dark, listening to every little sound, every gust of wind passing through the door. Part of me didn't want to admit it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something real lurking somewhere in this house. I don't feel safe anymore. Every heartbeat, every breath, everything is heavy and full of fear. This wooden house, although normal, has become a place full of strange things. And I can't escape the feeling that I'm not alone here. There is something waiting for me, lurking in dark walls, unexplored dark corners. And I'm afraid that if I don't leave, I will become part of this terrible story, like the people who have lived here before me. I began to check the hidden corners of the wooden house, every nook and cranny I could find, hoping to discover some clue. I searched every wooden panel, every door, and even under old carpets, but it was all in vain. This house seems to have kept all its secrets. Once again, the smell of mold and mildew rose, making the air even more stuffy. I couldn't escape the feeling that there was something waiting for me, lurking somewhere in this house, not a simple secret, but a real presence, something inexplicable. As I continued my search, I began to feel like I was entering a world that did not belong to me. Noises, no matter how small, startled me, feeling like everything around me was watching me. Every step I made, every small movement felt like an intrusion into this place, into this strange space where I wasn't allowed to be. My mind began to be more confused than ever. The feeling of stuffiness and coldness is increasing, as if I can't escape the encirclement of these mysteries. One afternoon, I met the caretaker again, whom I tried to ask more about the bungalow. Although he seemed reluctant to answer, I could clearly sense the fear and shyness in his eyes. When I asked about the secrets hidden in the house, he just shrugged and said that old wooden houses often have their own secrets. It is not surprising if there are strange noises or strange appearances. But I couldn't miss the reluctance in the way he responded. I decided I couldn't just stop here. I returned to the house and continued searching. As the days passed, I felt myself sinking deeper and deeper into paranoia. The darkness in this house seems to be getting thicker and thicker. No matter what I did, the feeling of being watched and an invisible presence was always there, inescapable. The strange noises continued, from creaking sounds on the floor to wind whistling through old windows, all seemingly trying to remind me that I wasn't the only one living in this house. One night, as I was sitting alone in the living room, I heard a small but distinct sound, like something dragging across the floor. My heart was pounding again, my throat was dry and I felt my breathing become rapid. I stood up and walked out, my eyes scanned every dark corner of the house, but there was nothing but darkness. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was still watching me from somewhere out of sight. That inexplicable feeling continued to follow me. And as I continued to search, I couldn't help but wonder if I was hallucinating, or if there really was an unexplained presence in this house. Why do I feel like I'm being watched? The feeling that there is a person or some creature living between these walls becomes more and more evident, as if this house is a living organism, with its own life. And I'm part of this story, part of something bigger, darker. Can I escape this feeling? Or will I become a part of this wooden house's story, a part that can never leave? I continued to walk into each room in the house. Nothing seemed to be able to relieve me. The walls, although silent, were like a canvas hiding horrifying secrets that I could not unravel. Every time I move, the sound beneath my feet serves as a reminder that I am never truly alone here. Vague, echoing noises as if someone was moving right behind me, always made me feel threatened. But when I turned around, I only saw hidden corners, inexplicable shadows, and a coldly quiet wooden house. Day by day, I became more and more tired, not because of the endless search, but because I felt like I was being persecuted by an invisible force. There are nights when I can't stop thinking that I will never get out of this place. The fear had consumed me to the point where I no longer had the strength to face it, but I couldn't leave. I cannot. One dark night, when I was sitting in the living room again, suddenly a very strange noise rang out, like a wheezing sound, very light but clear. I turned around immediately, my heart pounding again, but there was no one in the room, just me and the empty house. I tried to convince myself that I was just imagining it, but then I realized, in those silent moments, I could sense something nearby, lingering somewhere in the darkness. Fear rose, and I could no longer sit silently. I stood up, held a flashlight and decided to search for a place I had never dared to look for. I walked upstairs, where small windows showed me only the faint light of the night, and the walls were old and faded. I stopped in front of the bedroom, but couldn't ignore the feeling that there was something waiting for me inside. I took a deep breath and entered. There was only darkness and quiet space, but I clearly felt something was watching me from inside, hiding behind the wooden boards. I stepped closer, my heart pounding loudly in my chest. I couldn't help but think of that figure, the pale man with the empty eyes that had once looked at me from inside the wall. I remember that moment, remember the look of silent menace that I couldn't explain. I pushed the bed aside again, intending to search this space further, but when I looked at the board again, I felt like an invisible force was holding me tightly. A strange feeling arose within me, as if something beyond my understanding was lurking in the background. Each creak echoed from inside, and I knew that I couldn't give up finding the truth. With the hammer in hand, I was determined to expand that space, not letting fear take over me anymore. I hit the board, and pieces flew out, opening my way into a cramped, musty space. The light from my flashlight only illuminated a small part of that space, but I felt the presence still existing there, even stronger. As I glided through the cramped space, a feeling of horror rose within me. There was no sign of a living person, but the smell of stench, mold, and old wax still haunted the air. I couldn't stop thinking about the pale man, and suddenly, I felt like something was slowly approaching. The feeling that it was following me, from the darkness, made me turn around quickly, but I saw nothing but empty space. As I walked back into the hallway, I felt a chill run down my spine. That presence hasn't left yet. I couldn't shake that feeling, as if someone was still watching me, watching my every move. I tried to find a way to banish the fear, but that shadow seemed to be deeply imprinted in my mind, unable to escape. I knew I was slowly being pulled into a trap that I couldn't understand. This house is not just an old house, it is a living thing, something alive, containing secrets that I cannot imagine. And I know that, if I don't find out the truth, I will never be able to leave here. But then, there came a moment when I couldn't stand it anymore. I decided to leave. I packed up everything I could, with just one thought: I had to get out of this place, at all costs. However, even though I turned my back, even though I stepped out of that threshold, the strange and oppressive feeling still clung to me like a thin black smoke. Those images, those sounds, and especially the eyes, the empty eyes of the man in the secret room. They keep appearing in my head. Cannot be erased. Cannot be forgotten. Because those eyes are still looking at me. Somewhere, in the darkness that I thought I had left behind. When I returned to the house to pack up my things, the atmosphere was still the same, filled with stuffiness and fear. Every step in the house, every time I touch the old walls, I feel like an invisible hand is holding me back, forcing me to stay with the dark secrets of this place. The cold was still like a heavy blanket, suffocating me from all sides, and I couldn't escape the feeling. I tried to get everything done quickly, but in my heart I knew I couldn't stop until I left here. When I closed the door, preparing to leave, I suddenly felt a cold breeze rushing through, a strange breath from inside the house. I turned around, looked into the darkness, but there was nothing. There's no one. There's just an indescribable feeling, as if I'm leaving a part of myself in this house. As I sat in the car, watching the house gradually disappear behind the mist, I felt a strange emptiness. I got out, but could I really get out? Can I avoid what I have encountered, or will those things always follow me, lurking in the shadows, waiting for a moment to return? Everything seemed to fade from my vision, but the fear still refused to let go. In the following days, I couldn't get rid of the images of the wooden house and what happened in it. Every time I close my eyes, I see darkness, I hear strange sounds, and I feel an inexplicable presence. That feeling of fear still hasn't left me, like a shadow following closely, waiting for a moment of weakness to arise. I asked myself, could I really escape all that I encountered in that house? Or have I been caught in a vortex of inexplicable things, dark secrets that I cannot escape? I couldn't be sure of anything anymore, and deep down, I knew I would never forget those eyes, the empty and menacing look of the man in the wall. It will always be a part of me, and I cannot run away from it. So I will never go back to that house again. But does it really end here? Or is it just another chapter in a story I can't understand? Day after day, I tried to find a way to forget everything that happened at the wooden house. I moved to another house, where there was warm light, where the thick darkness no longer covered my every step. However, no matter how hard I tried, that obsession still wouldn't let go. The nightmares kept coming, the empty eyes of the man in the secret space still lingered in my mind, like a warning that I had not truly escaped something that had been liberated. Even though I no longer live there, every night, I still feel that cold feeling, that strange breath that I once felt in the old house. I couldn't stop thinking about the extinguished candles, the pieces of cloth, and the scratching sounds in the darkness. Not just memories, but it seems like a part of me was sucked into that house, unable to escape. Sometimes, I thought I was being watched by something, silently watching my every move, as if I couldn't completely shake off the house, its darkness, and its terrifying secrets. One night as I was sitting alone in my new living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I looked out the window, saw darkness enveloping me, and I felt something strange, something invisible surrounding me. The smell of candle wax and old wood suddenly returned to the air, reminding me of those scary nights in the wooden house. I felt a tug in my heart, and then I realized I couldn't hide forever. Suddenly, I heard a small noise, followed by a light scratching sound, as if from somewhere under my feet. My eyes opened wide, my heart pounded. I stood up, raised my head, and saw thick darkness outside the window. The space in the house became stuffy again, as if something was approaching me, waiting for an opportunity to return. I went to the door, opened it, but saw only quiet darkness. I stood there, breathing heavily, and heard the soft sound coming from behind me again. That feeling, the feeling I couldn't explain, came again. The empty eyes of the man in that secret space, his cold and emotionless gaze, appeared in my mind. I quickly closed the door, my heart beating rapidly in my chest. This feeling that cannot be shaken off, is like a ghost following me, watching me from every dark corner. I didn't dare open the door again. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew I couldn't escape that thing. I've been hiding for so long, but now it's found me again, it's getting closer, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. The next morning, when I woke up, my mind was still foggy. The nightmares continued, but this time they weren't just dream images. I can't be sure about anything anymore. Had I truly survived all I had been through, or was I just part of a story I couldn't escape? It felt like everything I had encountered, all those secrets and strange events, had become more than just a nightmare. It has become a part of me. The feeling of being watched still doesn't let me go. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard strange noises, distant whispers, the light footsteps of something I couldn't see. I felt it, in the air around me, in the darkness, and I knew it was waiting. Everything is not just a part of the past, but something that is alive within me, and I cannot escape it. At this moment, I no longer know whether I am alive or dead, I only know that that presence, that darkness that I cannot avoid, will always be with me. And whether I like it or not, I know that it will never leave me, ever. An extremely uncomfortable feeling, as if I was no longer safe even in my new home. This feeling, the feeling that there is something invisible, that cannot be touched but can be felt, becomes more and more evident. Strange sounds, inexplicable movements in the air, seemed to repeat what I had experienced in the wooden house. Light scratching sounds, invisible footsteps, it all seemed like a never-ending loop. Every night I have to stay awake, my eyes are tired but I can't close them, listening to every wind, every small noise, and feeling a presence that I can't see. One night, I couldn't stand it anymore. I spent all day trying to purge those thoughts from my head, but without success. When night fell, that feeling returned, stronger than ever. I stood up from the bed, but my body felt trapped in fear, my steps were unsteady. I opened the door, and immediately a blast of cold air rushed in. I looked into the hallway, the darkness was so thick as if it could swallow me up at any moment. I walked out, but something stopped me from going any further. An invisible force seemed to be pulling me back, holding me back. I stood there, in the dark, and felt a strange silence. The wind blew gently, but something was not right. I heard a noise, as if someone was moving in the darkness behind me, a slight movement, but enough to make me shiver. I turned around, but there was no one, nothing but the dim shadows of the house. But I felt a presence, so close that I could feel its breath on my skin. I hurried back to the room, closed the door and locked it tightly. Cold sweat began to break out on my forehead, and I couldn't stop the trembling in my body. I know that something is there, it's waiting, I just can't see it. That feeling of an intangible yet so tangible presence, enveloped me. I couldn't explain it, but I knew that it wasn't a dream, it wasn't a fantasy. It is real, it is something alive, close to me. I tried to calm down, but the more I tried, the more I felt fear spread through my body. I wondered if I was crazy, if I was living in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. But every time I tried to convince myself that it was all an illusion, I heard another sound, another movement, as if it were watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down and leave a chance for it to rise. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring into the darkness, listening to the sounds, feeling the presence I couldn't push away. Every wind, every little noise made my heart pound, and I knew I couldn't escape it. This feeling will follow me for the rest of my life, and I will never escape the darkness that has taken over my soul. Part of me wanted to run away, wanted to find shelter, but another part knew that there was no safe place. I ran away once, but what I ran away from wasn't just a house, it wasn't just ghosts. It is a part of me, and I cannot be separated from it. And as I looked into the darkness again, I knew that I couldn't run away forever. That thing will always follow me, lurking in the dark corners of my mind, waiting for a moment of weakness to return, to engulf me in eternal fear. In the days that followed, my life seemed to pass by in a chaos of fear and paranoia. Even though I no longer live in the old wooden house, the feeling of being watched still follows me, tormenting me every moment. Every time I wake up in a new room, the weak light from the window only makes me feel an indescribable emptiness. The darkness in my heart never fades, it keeps hiding in every corner of my mind, not allowing me to escape. I can't explain why I feel this way. I couldn't tell anyone what happened, because even if I did, I didn't believe anyone would believe me. Strange noises, the feeling of an invisible presence always following me, all of this made me tired both physically and mentally. Every night, I wake up in fear, then lie there, eyes wide open, waiting for a sound, some sign to confirm that I am still not completely free of it. Sometimes, I remember the caretaker of the wooden house, who just shrugged when I asked about the strange phenomena I had experienced. I wonder if he knows something that I don't know. Could he have had the same nightmares as me? Did he feel the presence I felt, or was he simply so used to it that he wasn't afraid anymore? Anyway, I can't go back and ask him. I couldn't go back to the village, couldn't face the walls that once held all my fears. The wooden house has been left behind, but in my mind, it is always there. One night, as I was sitting in my living room, listening to the vague sounds of the city echoing in the distance, I suddenly realized that I couldn't run away forever. Even if I change places, no matter where I go, that thing will always follow me. An uneasy feeling spread through my body, a feeling as if I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and in just one more step, I would fall into a bottomless pit. That darkness, the shadow of the old house, the shadow of the man in the wall, could not simply disappear. A scary thought suddenly flashed in my head. Did something in that house touch my mind? Have I carried a part of it with me throughout this life? I ran away from home, but did I take a part of it with me into my own mind? It is not just a memory, but a part of me, living and growing within myself. Fear is not something that can be easily escaped. It has been ingrained in me, imprinted on every cell of my being, and now it is controlling my life. Every night, when I try to sleep, I feel that presence, like a ghost that never leaves. I can't separate from it, can't shake the feeling that it will always be here, inside me, waiting for me to let my guard down to come back, to take me over again. I sat there, in the dark, listening to the noises around me. The creaking sounds, the soft breathing sounds, all served as a reminder that I never truly escaped that wooden house. The old walls are not just physical walls, they are a part of me, and I will never escape the darkness that has followed me for the rest of my life. No matter how hard I try to find peace, no matter where I run, I know that I cannot escape myself. That darkness, that obsession, will always follow me. The feeling of being watched still doesn't let me go. Every gust of wind, every slight movement in the air made me ache in fear. That figure, no matter where I looked, was always present in the corner of my eyes, as if waiting for a moment of my weakness to appear clearly again. I couldn't explain why I felt this way, but strange events seemed to continue to happen around me, not just memories, but a reality I couldn't escape. I began to notice that every step I took, every sound, every change in the air, seemed to have a purpose. At one point, I was no longer sure whether I was still awake or not. The feeling that I was living in a never-ending nightmare became stronger. The faint figure behind me kept watching, and I couldn't escape that feeling. It was like an invisible monster, alive and waiting, ready to swallow me into the darkness it created. One night, while I was sitting in the living room, the flickering light of the light bulb made me feel like something unusual was going on. Suddenly, the space around me became stuffy. My heart pounded, my chest tightened. The stench of old wax and mold returned, as if the old house was coming back to life within me. Strange noises rang out from behind. I turned around, but only saw darkness, no one. That feeling appeared again, an invisible presence was lurking, following my every step, every breath. I stood up, but my legs were paralyzed and I couldn't move. Even though there was nothing but silence, I clearly felt an invisible pressure pressing down on me. That presence is not just in this house, it has followed me, it has become a part of me. That shadow, that feeling of being watched forever will be here, and I can't get rid of it. Unable to bear it any longer, I decided to check again, going through every room in the house. Each door opened only to reveal thick darkness and cold air. Even though I knew there was nothing there, the feeling continued to overwhelm me, making it impossible for me to breathe normally. My mind became more chaotic than ever. Even though I couldn't see it, I felt that darkness, that presence, was waiting for me somewhere in this space. Finally, I stood back in the living room, where the lights suddenly flickered, as if something was happening outside of my vision. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't say why I felt that way. I felt an invisible force, as if a giant arm was pushing me closer to something terrifying, invisible. I hurried to the kitchen, trying to quell the feeling of fear inside me. But as I walked through the hallway, a cold wind blew past me, making me shiver. I felt a rush of cold air, as if something was moving with me. From the darkness, strange noises rang out, not from a tangible object, but from invisible ghosts moving around me. The anxiety increased, and I was no longer sure I could control my body. I feel like I can't escape this house, can't escape the feeling of being watched. That thing, the darkness, the inexplicable presence, was always there, following me every step of the way. I don't know how many days, how many nights, I have lived with this feeling, but I know that I will never truly escape it. That old house, with its secrets and mysterious entities in the dark, was no longer just a house. It has become a part of me. Every time I thought I had escaped, I felt that shadow still chasing me, still lingering in my mind, waiting for me to make an opening to return. And I know I will never escape that darkness. Every day, I try to live normally, trying to continue my life without letting fear take over. But it keeps coming back, hiding under layers of peace. That feeling always appears in the most seemingly trivial moments. Every time I walk into a room, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. Every little noise startled me. Every wind, every shade in the house, evokes in me images of those scary dark nights in that old wooden house. There are times when I sit alone in the living room, an indescribable feeling arises, as if someone is standing behind me, quietly looking at me. A strange feeling, both overwhelming and uncomfortable, as if an invisible hand was holding my heart tightly. I turned around, but there was no one, just quiet space. However, I still feel that presence, right in my every breath. At one point, I looked in the mirror, and my reflection didn't seem to be me anymore. My eyes were dark and haggard, as if I were living in a never-ending nightmare. I can't erase the memories of the old house, of the pale man, of the shadowy ghosts in the darkness. No matter where I go or what I try to do, those memories always follow me. Scratching sounds coming from the walls, inaudible whispers, always appeared in the dead of night, when everything was quietest. It seems that darkness is not only in the wooden house, but it has become a part of me, following me throughout my life. There were times when I thought I could get through it, that I would be stronger and not let fear rule my life. But then, when night comes, when darkness covers me, I feel that presence, almost enveloping me, unable to escape. And I don't know if I can continue to live in this fear forever. Every time I think I've escaped it, it comes back to me, stronger, more intense, like a nightmare that never ends. I tried to face my fears, tried to face those memories, but each time, I felt myself being drawn further into the vortex of nightmares. I realized that perhaps I wasn't being watched, but I was being turned into a part of that story, an inseparable part. That darkness is not just an entity outside of me, but something deeply ingrained in my mind, in my soul. It does not leave me, it is inseparable. One night, as I stood in front of the window and looked out, I saw a dark shadow rushing past, so fast that I didn't have time to notice it. My eyes opened wide, my heart pounded. I felt a strange coldness, as if someone was standing outside the door, watching me. I turned around, but when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see my reflection. Instead, that image, that shadow, appeared right behind me, in the dark corner of the room. I shouted, but there was no sound. This feeling, this inexplicable presence, enveloped me once again. I wanted to run away, but I knew that wherever I went, that shadow would follow me. It wasn't just fear, but a feeling of inescapable oppression, as if I were imprisoned in my own life. I decided to find a way to face it, to not let it overwhelm me. But as I searched for an explanation, I realized that the more I tried to understand it, the deeper I was pulled into that darkness. Maybe I have become a part of this story, a story without end, where darkness will always win. No matter where I change my residence, no matter what I do, the sounds of breathing, the invisible footsteps, and the soulless look of the man in the wall will always stick with me. That feeling will never leave me, and perhaps, I will never escape the darkness that I have created for myself. Day after day, I continue to live in indescribable fear. The new house is not where I find peace, but where the hauntings continue to follow me. Even though I tried to create a new life, fear still seeped into every fiber of my being, every breath I took. There are nights when I look into the darkness of the room, and I feel like everything is receding behind me, as if the room is shrinking, and the darkness is swallowing me up little by little. I don't dare sleep alone. Even when there are other people around, I still feel an extreme tension. Strange sounds, creaks, whispers that I couldn't explain, made me never feel safe. I couldn't ignore the feeling that someone was standing behind me, looking at me, waiting for me to reveal myself. It is an invisible but very strong, undeniable presence. One night, as I was sitting in the living room, trying to concentrate on a book but the words in front of my eyes seemed to blur, I suddenly realized that I could no longer concentrate on anything. The feeling of being watched came back. I turned back to look out the window, but there was nothing but pitch black night. However, I could feel an invisible force floating around me, covering all space. I stood up, walked out into the hallway, and felt a change in the air. The space seemed to be tightening, everything became blurry. I turned back to look at the room, and there, in the darkness, I saw it, a shadowy, looming figure, but enough for me to feel its terrifying presence. I blinked once, and the shadow disappeared, as if nothing had happened. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't go on anymore. I quickly ran into the bedroom, closed the door and locked it. Even though the room was now silent, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was not alone. That presence is still somewhere in this house, maybe a part of myself, an inseparable part. The feeling of fear still lingers inside me, like a ghost that never leaves. From then on, the nights I spent were no longer peaceful nights. Every time I wake up, I don't know if I'm in a dream or living in a never-ending nightmare. Strange sounds, unseen footsteps, and shadowy figures always appeared, making it impossible for me to escape the spiral of paranoia. Then one day, I realized that maybe I couldn't run away from it. These things, the shadows, the strange noises, the strange images, became a part of me. It's not just a haunting from the old house, but a part of my mind, a part of my soul. I can't escape it, no matter how hard I try. There's one thing I've learned from all of these experiences: fear never really goes away. It is not something that can be left behind, but something that we carry with us, allowing it to gradually eat away at every part of us. Sometimes, the fears we think we have overcome are actually just waiting for an opportunity to return, stronger, more brutal. Now, I no longer feel peaceful. The new house, even without the direct darkness of the old wooden house, still felt like part of a haunting that I couldn't shake. That shadow, no matter where I run, always follows me, always covers my life like an inseparable black veil. And perhaps, I have become a part of this story. A story without an end, a story with no way out. That darkness took over me, and I knew, no matter how hard I tried, would never escape it. The feeling became so strong, I couldn't bear it any longer. I quickly stood up, my hands shaking as I pushed the chair away from the table, feeling like an invisible force was pulling me into that darkness. Eerie sounds continued to echo, not from outside, but from inside this cabin, as if the house itself was emitting strange noises. A cold feeling ran down my spine, and I couldn't help but feel that something was standing right behind me. With every step I took, every sound I heard, that feeling became clearer. I looked around, but the small room was still empty. There was no one, nothing but the cold walls and darkness that surrounded me. But I still can't deny that something very strange, very unusual is happening. I felt that presence, the feeling that I was not alone in this house, even though no one appeared. The ancient wooden comb I found this morning still lingers in my mind. I couldn't understand why there was such an item here, in a completely deserted cabin. The strange symbols on that comb made me shiver. It was like a message, a warning, but I couldn't decipher it. Is it mocking me? Or is it leading me to a secret I cannot understand? I tried to calm down, but the sounds didn't stop. They seemed to be pouring into my head, twisting my mind. Light tapping sounds, as if someone was tapping on the boards in this house. I didn't dare go out, but curiosity and fear kept me from sitting still. I walked through the hallway, approaching the source of the sound. When I placed my hand on the wall, the air around me became strangely cold. That feeling came back again, the feeling of being watched and touched from a distance that I couldn't see. I didn't dare turn around, but I couldn't stop feeling that something was lurking in the darkness. My eyes gradually blurred from the tension, and for a moment, I felt like I was in a nightmare. I tried to move, but my body felt paralyzed. I couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand still and listen. Every sound, every vibration in the house makes me feel like I can't escape this spiral. Something was coming at me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Suddenly, the sound stopped, and I stood there in complete silence. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't understand why I felt this way. I wanted to run, wanted to escape this cabin, but my body felt frozen. The thick darkness in space seemed to surround me, making it impossible for me to see clearly what was happening. I forced myself to step outside, wanting to escape that stuffiness, but as soon as I opened the door, the cold wind blew in, carrying a wave of fear. I walked outside, looked around but saw nothing but darkness. The trees rustled in the wind, but there were no signs of life. Still, I couldn't leave. That feeling still sticks with me, and I know that if I don't find out the truth, I will never be able to rest easy. I wasn't just running away from an old home, I was running away from my own fear, something I couldn't control. I used to think that when I reached this place, I could find peace. But now, I realize that I am caught up in a never-ending nightmare. And perhaps, I will never find a way out. Because that thing, the darkness, had become a part of me, and I couldn't escape it. Day after day, I tried to keep a shell of calm, but inside, the waves of fear kept rolling. It felt like a part of me had been taken over, something invisible but very real, inseparable. Even though I tried to find peace elsewhere, tried to create a new life, that feeling, the feeling of being watched and controlled, always followed me, indelible. The beautiful little cabin seemed like a place where I could find myself again, but now, it has become a trap for fears that I cannot escape. The silence of this cabin is never truly peaceful. The atmosphere was heavy and gloomy, covering every corner of the house. The wind whistled through the door, strange sounds echoed from the old wooden planks. Every night, I would hear light scratching sounds, invisible footsteps, as if someone was sneaking around the house, waiting for a moment of my weakness to appear. Every time I walked through the hallway, I always felt like there was something behind me, even though when I turned around, there was nothing but darkness. This fear cannot be expressed, cannot be shared. Every time I try to explain those feelings to friends and loved ones, they don't understand. They don't feel what I'm living with. They just looked at me with concern, as if I was slowly losing my sanity. But I know, what I feel is not an illusion. I have seen things that no one can explain. An ancient wooden comb, strange symbols, signs that no one can explain. And I can't deny the feeling that everything around me is changing, deforming. One night, as I sat in the living room, listening to the howling sound of the wind outside the window, a sudden blast of cold air blew through the room. The light from the dim lamp makes the space dim. The darkness seemed to cling to every item in the room, covering everything, making everything unreal. I felt that familiar feeling again, that presence, something I couldn't see, but felt clearly in every breath. I stood up, walked towards the window, opened it to feel the cold outside. But as soon as I looked outside, I saw it, a dark figure standing in the middle of the garden, not moving, just standing there looking at me. I was startled, my heart pounding loudly in my chest. I quickly closed the door, but that image never faded. I couldn't tell what it was, but a feeling of fear took over me completely. This feeling, the feeling of being constantly watched, just stuck with me. Sometimes I wonder, am I crazy? Is all of this just a product of my imagination, of the worries in my head? But then I remembered what happened in the old wooden house. Strange phenomena, unexplainable sounds, the shadow of that man. I cannot ignore them. And I know that I can't run away. That feeling is not something that happens overnight. It's been inside me for so long, like I'm trapped in my own story, unable to escape. No matter if I changed my place of residence or what I tried to do, that darkness still followed me. And now, it seems that it is no longer something foreign, but a part of me, an inseparable part. There were times when I thought I had overcome my fear, but all it took was a strange wind or a small noise for the phobia to return. I began to find myself living in an endless loop of fear and despair. I can't escape, I can't hide. And each time, I feel like I'm sinking deep into a bottomless abyss, where there's no way out. When I entered the kitchen, the space became even colder and stuffier. I noticed that the things around me were no longer simple objects. They all mean something, as if they can speak, can move, can cause harm. An old fireplace, old porcelain cups, all create a strange picture. I began to feel like a stranger in my own home, as if I was invading a space where I did not belong. I don't know how much longer I can endure. I can't leave here, but I also can't live with this feeling. The darkness was deeply ingrained in my mind, and I couldn't escape it. The wooden comb, the strange symbols, all the strange events, they were all part of me, of the me that couldn't escape. The never-ending nightmares, the unseen footsteps, the inexplicable feeling of being watched, all were gathering inside me, day after day. And perhaps, I have become a part of that darkness, unable to escape, unable to cut off. That thing became a part of me, eating away at me little by little. The darkness in the wooden house is not just a memory. It is an entity, something that lives inside me, and it will never leave. This feeling cannot be fully described in words. It was as if every step I took was a pair of invisible eyes watching from behind, from the darkness of the objects around me. The objects in this cabin are no longer simply objects. They seem to have a soul of their own, and every time I looked at them, I felt like I was facing a living entity, something incomprehensible. Every morning when I wake up, I feel my body is heavy and tired, as if I have been running through a long nightmare without stopping. The dim light of morning filtered through the window, but could not dispel the feeling of frustration in the air. The shadows of the trees outside the window seem to be moving, extending darkness into the room. It feels as if, even outside, everything is watching me. I can't escape this vicious circle, where I always feel surrounded, even taking a step outside is a challenge. I continued to live like that, trying to maintain my life, but my mind was always haunted by an indescribable feeling. There is something waiting for me. It's not far away, it's always close. I started to think that maybe what I was experiencing wasn't a hallucination, but something that actually existed. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I hear whispers from somewhere in the house. Soft noises as if someone was moving in the dark, but when I turned around, there was nothing but empty space. I began to wonder if I was stuck in a never-ending loop where I lived with indelible memories of the old wooden house. But am I living in a nightmare? Is this fear a result of what I've been through, or is it something I can't explain? Were those memories starting to creep into my mind, starting to affect me? The images of the wooden comb, the strange symbols on it, stuck firmly in my mind. I can't stop thinking about them, and they continue to haunt me in every sleep, every waking moment. Then one night, when I couldn't sleep, when everything became too heavy, I decided to face it. I got up and went outside, not to look for answers, but just to breathe, to feel the open space outside, even though I knew this wouldn't solve anything. But when I stepped outside, that feeling came back. That shadow, the feeling that someone is always standing behind me, covers me. I turned around, but there was no one, only trees, and clouds floating in the sky. When I returned to the cabin, I could feel a change in the air. Things are no longer the same as before. The house, although silent, felt like it was waiting for something. I walked around the cabin, opening each door, but all it led to was darkness, empty space, and the sound of my own breathing. When I returned to the living room, I looked at the old wooden comb I had left on the table. Those symbols seemed to have changed, they seemed to be moving under the dim light of the lamp. I couldn't help but look at them, as if I was drawn to them, unable to stop. Part of me wanted to run, wanted to get out of here, but the other part of me wanted to better understand what was happening. What is waiting for me? Can I continue living while that presence still haunts me endlessly? I felt like I was standing between two worlds, one world of reality, where I could control everything, and another world, where I couldn't explain anything. And the truth is, I don't know what world I'm living in anymore. Now, I realize that I cannot escape what happened, cannot escape those memories, cannot escape the darkness I created. It stuck to me like a scar on my mind, never to heal. And perhaps, that thing, the darkness that I cannot understand, will be something I have to live with for the rest of my life. That feeling, heavy and inexplicable, remained with me throughout the journey. Even though I left that cabin, the darkness, the feeling of being watched, still stuck with me. I couldn't escape it, couldn't shake a presence I couldn't understand. I drove in the night, not knowing if I was running away or trying to find something, a safe place, a place where I could end this obsession. When I stopped the car in the motel parking lot, the feeling of tension did not subside. I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror for long, afraid that I would see that shadow, the shadow that had haunted me all this time, sitting in the back seat, waiting for me to come back. But when I opened the car door, there was nothing but the silence of the deserted parking lot, the street lights flickering in the distance. Yet, I still feel that presence, the feeling that I am never alone, no matter where I am. I entered the inn, trying to calm myself down. My room is simple, just an old bed, a table and a dim night light. But that doesn't make me feel secure. I locked the door, closed all the windows, as if they could protect me from something I couldn't explain. But a part of me knew that this space, no matter how safe, could not stop the darkness that followed me. I tried to get used to this new space, but the feeling that someone was watching me never left. Every time I hear strange noises, every time I see the darkness outside my window, I can't help but feel an intense sense of anxiety. I know, no matter where I am, that thing, something I can't explain, is always somewhere. As long as I let loose, it will return. When I lie in bed, my eyes cannot close. That image, the wooden comb with strange symbols, appeared in my mind again. I can't forget the feeling when I touched it, when I felt something invisible, something taking over me. Every time I think about it, I feel an immense fear. A light knock sounded from outside the door, making me jump. I gasped, that feeling came back again. But when I opened the door, there was no one standing there. There is only dark space, and silence. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something waiting for me, in the darkness, watching me. That presence, which I cannot see, cannot feel with my eyes, but I know it is there. And it's waiting. The next day, when I woke up, my body was exhausted. I didn't sleep well all night, my eyes wide open in the dark, listening to every noise, every small sound, thinking I would hear footsteps, hear whispers from hidden corners of the room. But nothing. The silence was so long and thick that I couldn't breathe. I can't continue living like this, I can't live in this fear forever. But I know, if I don't leave, that presence will never give up on me. I tried my best to escape it, but it seemed to be ingrained in me. Every step I take, every moment I live, it is still there, never leaving me. And I realized something important, I couldn't escape that darkness. It has become a part of me, and will always remain, as an inseparable part. When I decided to come back, I didn't know what I was doing. Maybe I'm just running away from myself. That darkness has touched me, and I will never be able to escape it. It will follow me throughout my life, constantly following me, constantly challenging me. That obsession is not something that can be ignored. It is a part of me, and always will be. The feeling of being watched still follows me, and as the days go by, I feel it more and more strongly. It is not just an invisible obsession, but has become a real presence, present in every step, in every space that I try to create. Every time I thought I was out, that I could start over, that shadow appeared again, silent, wordless, but strong and threatening. Even if I run away or change my place of residence, I realize that this space, no space, cannot make me escape this feeling. I couldn't stop thinking about that strange wooden comb. It's like an object that sticks to me, engraved in my mind, like a scar that won't heal. The symbols on the comb are not just meaningless symbols, they are like a message, a warning that I cannot fully understand. Every time I see that comb, I feel like I'm being sucked into another world, where unexplainable entities exist, where I am no longer myself, but a part of this haunting story. The more I tried to explain, the more I felt like I was going into a vicious circle. The things I saw, the sounds I heard, they couldn't just be imagination. I have experienced too many strange events that cannot be explained. And not just me, even my previous roommates felt something, even though they couldn't admit it. One of them, after hearing me talk about my experiences, shared that he had also heard strange sounds in the house we lived in before. But he still refused to call it supernatural. He thought it was just psychological stress, the body's reaction to past events. I was starting to feel like I didn't have the strength to fight anymore. Every day, every night, I live in a never-ending nightmare. That feeling of fear never left me, and I couldn't explain why it continued to haunt me. I tried to face it, tried to find an explanation, but the more I searched, the more I felt like I was being sucked into an endless vortex. One day, as I sat in my motel room, with nothing but darkness, I felt that presence approaching. Not something visible to the eyes, but a feeling, something invisible but strong. That shadow is still lingering in the air, in the corners of my mind. I cannot escape it. Every time I look out the window, I feel like someone is looking at me, watching my every move, every breath. Every time I step outside, I can't help but feel something is still close, right behind me. I used to think that running away was the only way to escape this obsession, but now, I realize that I cannot run away forever. Because I carried that shadow within myself. It has become a part of me. And I understand that, no matter what I do, it will always stay. It has been engraved deeply into my soul, into my every thought, every action. This feeling is inexplicable, cannot be shared with anyone. Every time I try to speak, I feel like I'm lost in my own story. Nightmares are inseparable, and in my dreams, I always feel like I'm returning to my old house, with its inexplicable ghosts. Sometimes I think I can escape, that I will overcome this fear. But I can't. And I know I will probably have to live with it for the rest of my life. One night, as I stood in front of the window, looking out at the dark sky, I felt that everything had changed. That darkness is no longer something outside of me, but a part of me. It has eaten away all my hope, and now I can no longer find any light but that shadow. My dreams are no longer dreams. They are part of reality, vivid memories that I cannot erase. I understand that, no matter what I do, that darkness will never leave me. It has become a part of me. And maybe, I don't want to escape it either. Because in a way, it made me feel alive. With each step through the narrow path, I clearly felt the change in the air. The cold, not from the wind, but like a cold, inexplicable current of air, began to fill my body. The summer night I was experiencing was no longer normal. The silence in the forest made my feeling of insecurity increase even more. It seems like there is something invisible, waiting, watching from the shadows of the trees, from the leaves swaying slightly under each breeze. I didn't dare look back, but that feeling, that indelible sense of a presence enveloping me, became clearer and clearer. My group walked in silence, only the sound of footsteps on the wet ground and gasps as everyone tried to keep their bearings. We each carried a flashlight, and although we tried to act calm, part of me knew we were facing something that neither of us could explain. Every time the flashlight shined on the tall tree trunks, casting long and gloomy shadows, I felt something was watching. That feeling, like a presence from the darkness, lingered, unable to stop. I tried to push that thought away, but it never left me. Every time I look into the dark night, I see faint, fleeting shapes in the darkness. The tree branches stretch out like hands, ready to reach out, hold me back, pull me into a world that I cannot escape. At one point, I suddenly heard strange whispers, not the sound of the wind, but as if someone was talking, calling my name, and I couldn't determine its origin. It was not an ordinary noise, but something deeper, a feeling of terror and anxiety. The feeling of being watched never left me. Every time I turned around, I didn't see anything, but I knew that something was right behind me. The dim light from the flashlight seems not enough to dispel the darkness, on the contrary, it only highlights its mystery and danger. I started to feel like I couldn't go on anymore, my body became heavy, each step became more difficult. This night is not like other nights. It's not just the usual fear of walking in the woods at night, it was an invisible fear, a presence that I couldn't touch, but felt clearly. When we stopped to rest, no one said anything, but I could sense the tension in the group. Everyone looked around, as if looking for a sign, an explanation for this indescribable feeling. No one spoke, but all eyes looked into the darkness, where nothing was clear, where the darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, I could sense that we weren't the only ones in this forest. There was a small noise, a rustling sound from behind us, causing the whole group to turn around in unison. But nothing. Just darkness, just trees, and an eerie silence. But I felt that there was something in that darkness, watching us. It's not any animal, it's not a person. It is something more ancient, incomprehensible, that we cannot face directly. We continued walking, but no one dared to go faster. Each person in the group kept their distance, as if not wanting to let anyone stand too close. I could sense that we all had a common fear, a fear that we couldn't share, but we all knew that there was something in that darkness, waiting for us. Part of me wanted to run, to leave everything behind and leave, but I knew that even if I did, that presence would still follow me. We continued deeper into the forest, and as the shadows thickened, I couldn't help but think that we were all being drawn into an experiment from which we couldn't escape. That darkness has been waiting for a long time, and now it has begun to speak, has begun to wrap around us, pushing us into a trial that we cannot understand. Voices, footsteps, fleeting figures all lead us further into a world we cannot control. And as we continued walking, I knew that shadow would never leave me. It was here, in our footsteps, in every wind, and in the nights without light. Whether we flee or not, that presence will forever pursue us, forever, as part of a darkness we cannot fully understand. Every step I took in the dark made me feel more stressed. Even though we were following a trail between tall pine trees, the surrounding space became narrow and gloomy. Pine trees with intertwined branches form a dense canopy, blocking moonlight from reaching the ground, leaving everything around them in deep darkness. Our flashlights emitted weak streaks of light, flashing a little and then falling back into darkness. It was like the flickering lights of a ghost ship, guiding us through incomprehensible lands. I felt a cold breeze run down my spine. Even though it was still warm, I felt like I was surrounded by some invisible cold. The pine trees stretched out, their branches swaying like long hands trying to hold us back. My eyes kept moving back and forth, trying to find some form in the darkness, but I could find nothing but our own shadows moving on the ground. The feeling of insecurity began to creep into every muscle in my body. My feet slowed down, but I couldn't stop. Although I tried to laugh and listen to the strange stories my group of friends were telling about lost souls in the forest, about strange ghosts that someone had seen, in my heart, fear grew stronger. I can't understand why, but something makes me uncomfortable. Even though my group of friends were talking about funny stories and strange legends, I felt like something was watching, listening to every word I said. A friend in the group told of a ghost that lured tourists into a quagmire deep in this forest. The image of that ghost made me shiver. I couldn't escape the feeling that someone was watching, waiting for a moment to reveal themselves. I tried to dispel this feeling by smiling faintly, but I couldn't. The cold in the air became more and more dense. My skin was covered in chills, as if something was hovering around me. We continued deeper into the forest, along the winding road. The tree wings stretched out like giant hands, covering the space, making me feel like I was trapped in a dark maze. We talked, but my voice seemed distant, as if muffled by the dense space around me. Suddenly, a strange sound rang out in the silent space. A small noise, as if someone had just walked gently among the pine trees. I turned around, but didn't see anyone. There was only darkness, only the dim light from our flashlights. However, that feeling, the feeling of being watched, became even stronger. I can't explain this feeling, but I clearly felt that something was waiting for us ahead. We kept going, but I couldn't help but feel that we were entering some unusual territory. The strange noises seemed to come from hidden corners of the forest, whose origin could not be determined. A strong wind blew, making the pine trees make strange sounds, like whispers from somewhere, inaudible. After a while, we stopped next to a large tree. The feeling of insecurity grew inside me, but I still couldn't stop. The flickering light from the flashlight seemed to be guiding us into the darkness. We started discussing whether to keep going or turn back, but in my heart, I didn't want to continue. Something inside me told me that if I continued, would never go back. I glanced around again, and this time I saw something flash in the darkness, a fleeting shape among the trees. My heart beat strongly. I couldn't be sure what it was, but it didn't look like a silhouette of a tree or an animal. It looks like a person, but it isn't. That figure, blurry and strange, disappeared as soon as I looked back. An eerie silence fell, and I began to feel like I was losing control. That feeling, that presence, is getting closer, stronger. I wanted to turn back, but my legs couldn't seem to move anymore. Since when has that shadow been following us? Is it waiting for us to get closer? An indescribable feeling of fear welled up inside me. And I know, if I don't stand firm, I will never get out of this forest. I stood there paralyzed, my legs frozen in place, unable to move. Every cell in my body seemed to be protesting, resisting the unusual cold spreading around me. The ground I had just stepped on was inexplicably cold, as if a cold wave from another world was flowing beneath the soft soil. That feeling, the numbing coldness, was not of the wind, but like something deeper, like an invisible force controlling this space. The sweat on my forehead froze into cold drops, but I couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety spreading in my chest. The shadow, a giant black shape in the darkness, still haunts me. Every time I remember that moment, when the flashlight shined on that strange shape, I felt my heart pounding, as if something was grabbing my heart, squeezing it. In an instant, that figure disappeared as if it had never existed. But at that moment, I felt a presence clearer, stronger than ever, as if it was looking at me, waiting for me to turn around, ready to pull me into the darkness. I swallowed hard, trying to breathe deeply to dispel the feeling of suffocation. But the more I tried, the more I felt my body locked in fear. I pointed my flashlight at the empty space where the figure stood, but there was nothing but dense pine trees, dry branches, covered with a thin layer of dust. Everything seemed normal, but the cold I felt couldn't be normal. I backed away, my hands shaking around the flashlight, unable to shake the feeling that something was nearby. As I took a step back, my eyes caught a glimpse of something sparkling on the ground, near where the figure had been standing. A faint light, as if something was reflecting the beam from my flashlight. I moved closer, my palms were sweaty, the feeling of not being able to breathe began to overwhelm me again. We had only been in this forest for a short while, but the strange feeling was already thick around me like an inseparable blanket. The cold, the silence, and now what I was seeing on the ground, it all made me feel an irresistible urge. I had to know, I had to see what was happening. My flashlight flashed across a patch of ground covered in pine needles, the light flickering, as if searching for an explanation for this strangeness. And then I saw it, something thin, faint but distinct, lying on the ground near where the figure had disappeared. I moved closer, dazzled by the light reflected from the flashlight, making me feel like I was facing something that did not belong to this world. The object's surface reflected light like broken glass, and the air around it was unbearably cold. My feet hit the ground hard, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Although I can't explain it, I know one thing for sure, this is not normal. The ground was frozen beneath my feet, and I couldn't understand why there could be such a big change in temperature on this summer night. This cold, thick air feels like it's swallowing me whole. My legs stepped back, no longer having the strength to stand. I turned back to look at my group. The others had gone quite a distance, not realizing the abnormalities around them. But I can't keep walking like everything is fine. I couldn't leave that silence, that presence behind. I felt something was chasing me, and maybe, the shadow that I couldn't see had been following me from the beginning. That shadow, not just a shape in the dark, but something dominating, controlling. That feeling was always overwhelming, as if I had never really left the bungalow, and there was no other way out than to accept that I would have to live with it. With shaking fingers, I quickly ran after the group, trying not to let them notice my panic. But in my head, I knew that something had changed, and I couldn't tell if I was going to survive the night. The shadows of the night have been waiting for a long time, and perhaps, this night is when they let go and reveal themselves, ready to devour all those who dare to face them. The air around me became thicker and more stuffy than ever. The cold inside me now doesn't just come from the outside, but has seeped into every corner of my mind, like a wound that has penetrated deep into my soul. The sound of your group's footsteps gradually faded away, blending into the sound of silence. This silence is not peace, but a threatening stillness. Something was quietly watching, waiting, and every time I tried to relax, I felt the invisible hand of fear squeezing my heart. I pointed my flashlight into the darkness, not because I hoped to find an answer, but because I couldn't stop looking, as if I didn't see anything, the presence would grow stronger. Every time I turned around, I saw only empty darkness. And then, amidst the dense space of pine trees, I saw it again. That silhouette, again. It had no clear shape, but I could feel it, a huge, dark presence, encompassing everything around me. Every time I see it, I feel like it's pulling me backwards, forcing me into a space I can't escape from. It seems like I'm going into a vicious circle where I can't stop searching, can't stop to explain. I don't know if it's my imagination, a psychological game, or if there's really something supernatural following me. But I know one thing, it doesn't just want me to see, it wants me to feel, it wants me to believe that it is present and waiting for me. The feeling of being watched made me unable to focus on the stories my group of friends were telling. Although they continued to exchange legends, I no longer heard those words. My ears could no longer hear anything but the pounding of my heart. I became detached, unable to participate in the conversation anymore. Every word becomes meaningless. All I felt was the thick silence of the forest and the icy cold that swallowed me whole. As we headed down a smaller trail, into a shallow valley, I felt the presence even more clearly. Everything around me started to become blurry. The light from the flashlight no longer illuminates much, only enough to see messy tree roots and rotten logs. I felt a change in the air, as if everything around me was changing, spinning around me. The feeling of separation from the group became more evident. I felt surrounded, as if the pine trees were closing in on me, putting me in a cocoon with no way out. Every step I took made me feel deeper and deeper into the darkness. And then, again, I saw it. That figure, inexplicable, was wandering among the trees. It was not an ordinary silhouette, but something lingering, immeasurable. It swallowed all light, disappearing as soon as my flashlight shined on it. For a brief moment, I felt like my heart stopped beating, as if the whole world had suddenly stopped. At this point, I no longer felt like I was part of the group. Everything around seemed to spin, no longer the forest I knew. Instead, it had turned into a trap, a space filled with a presence I couldn't understand. The small details around me, the footprints, the strong metallic smell, and the strange rustling from the tree branches, all only served to heighten my fear. Everything is raising doubts about its existence, about why I was chosen as a target. And then, as I stood in that open space, I realized that I couldn't leave, couldn't escape this shadow. I felt my body frozen, weighed down by an invisible force. The group continued moving forward, but I couldn't move. This time, it wasn't just fear anymore. I felt like I was being pulled somewhere, a place I couldn't explain. Part of me wanted to scream, wanted to tell the group to turn around and leave this forest immediately, but my mouth was choked, unable to make any sound. I realized that I had become part of this story, a story that I couldn't escape. And in this darkness, I don't know what else I will face, only that I cannot leave until I decipher everything that is happening around me. That presence, that dark shadow, it will always be here, next to me, as part of the darkness that cannot be erased. And I don't know if I'll be brave enough to face it, or if I'll be consumed by my own fear. My feeling right now is like a knife cutting straight into my heart, cutting through every thought and emotion. I tried to breathe, but the air around me was too heavy, too cold, as if every particle of air carried the gloom of another world. I couldn't understand why I felt this way, but I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't escape this feeling. It was a presence that I couldn't explain, couldn't face. When my name was whispered again, I sensed that it was not just an accidental sound. It was like a command, a request from the darkness, an irresistible urge. Every step I took, every breath I took, beat to the rhythm of that shadow, which I couldn't stop looking at. Even though I knew that no one in our group felt it, I couldn't help but feel the tension that was overwhelming me. The so-called safety in crowds no longer works for me. I felt like I was standing between two worlds. One side was that presence, and the other side was the group of friends who continued walking, not realizing what was happening. My flashlight trembled in my hand, and when I turned to look for the shadow, its image appeared again. It stood quietly outside the range of light. Its shadow was long and dim, almost swallowing everything around it. I couldn't clearly identify the shape, but I felt every detail in my body. Every cell seemed to want to leave my body, to run away from this presence. I swallowed a breath, trying to regain my composure, but I couldn't. Every time I looked into that darkness, the feeling of fear grew stronger. My instincts told me to run, to return to the group immediately, but my legs didn't seem to listen. That feeling, the invisible pressure on my chest, made me unable to move, unable to breathe. I stood still, unable to turn my head, but that shadow appeared even clearer. Even though no sound came out, I felt like it was silently beckoning to me, something indescribable, as if I was being drawn into a trap from which I couldn't escape. When I looked back at the group, I could only see panic starting to rise. Some people began to realize something was wrong. But they can't feel the threat like I do. They kept walking, carefree, completely unaware of what I had seen. But I know, that shadow is not an imagination. I couldn't trust my sanity anymore, and it felt like I was entering a land that no one could save me from. When the group stopped again, I could only mutter unconsciously that, "There's something out there." My words weren't strong enough to alleviate my fear. I felt an emptiness, a void between me and all that was happening. I can't keep moving, can't leave this place. I cannot escape that darkness. When I looked back, the group's flashlights only shined into the darkness, but found nothing but dense pine trees and frost-covered ground. But before we continued walking, I realized something very clear, that presence had not left. It's still here, within us, and I don't know what to do with this feeling anymore. Silence covered the space. I could feel the tension, and just when I thought I was about to say something, everything seemed to stop, like an eternity. Something indescribable was engulfing me. And then, when I looked towards the group members, I saw strange looks. They began to understand that something was wrong, but they still couldn't pinpoint it. As we walked, I knew that even if I left, I would never be able to shake this feeling. That shadow, that presence I cannot escape, will always be with me, like a part of a story I cannot end. That feeling of fear, which I cannot explain, will always be a part of me. The atmosphere became so heavy, thick and still that I could hear my every breath, the only sound in the forest. However, every step I took felt more and more tense, as if something was chasing me, something invisible but making me clearly feel its presence. As I stopped, trying to catch my breath, the light of my flashlight flickered around the trees, but couldn't illuminate everything. In that flickering light, I saw it again, the figure leaning against the large oak tree, a figure standing still in the darkness, almost blending into the surrounding darkness. My heart was pounding, each beat like an alarm in my head. I couldn't clearly see the face or any features, only the giant hood pulled so low that it covered the entire face, like a ghost in winter clothes. Every reason in me wanted to turn around, wanted to run, but my feet felt like they were stuck to the ground. I couldn't take my eyes off that figure, not even for a second. That presence was so strong, so threatening, that I couldn't do anything but stand silently, trying to understand what was happening. My breathing seemed to stop, and in this dark space, I could only hear the sound of blood pounding in my ears, urgently, as if trying to escape my body. Every time I close my eyes, its image appears in my mind, its shadowy form, incredibly tall, standing there, silent but powerful. The air around me was stuffy, I couldn't help but feel like it was watching me, waiting for some wrong move to move towards me. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stood there as if testing me. Suddenly, a cold wind blew, bringing with it the sound of rustling leaves, and I turned around in surprise. When I opened my eyes, that figure had disappeared, as if it had never existed, leaving only dense darkness surrounding me. Yet I can't shake the feeling that it's still here, that it's still in my peripheral vision, just waiting for me to turn around, to approach it once more. My legs finally moved, but not because of my control. Every step I took made me feel like I was walking deeper into an invisible trap, a trap I couldn't escape from. The cold winds continued to weave through the tree branches, carrying whispers that I couldn't distinguish, couldn't tell whose it was or where it came from. The silence was heavy and long, seemingly without end. As I continued walking, I felt my body weaken, as if each step was a battle with myself. My breathing became heavy and difficult. For the first time, I really felt the fatigue of my mind and body. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't help but think about it, that shadow, that presence that I couldn't explain, that followed me every step I took. And then, when I thought I was out of it, when I had almost seen the peace after the dark night, I heard it again. This time, not through the night, not through the darkness, but through a clear look, a whisper that carries patience and waiting. It wasn't just calling my name, it was calling me into a deep place, a place of no return. The wind blew past, bringing with it a cold feeling, and I couldn't help but believe that I was still being watched, being led, step by step, towards a place I couldn't escape. I continued walking into the night, my feet felt heavy as if they were sinking deep into the ground. The cold of the forest not only invaded my body but also chilled every corner of my soul. That presence, even though I couldn't see it clearly, still lurked in the darkness, following my every step, like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Every time I turned around, I saw only darkness, but the feeling persisted, that something was nearby, standing in the darkness, waiting. As I walked deeper into the forest, my flashlight was only enough to illuminate a narrow section of the path. Everything around me became blurry and difficult to recognize. Branches and bushes reached out like hands trying to hold me back, pulling me into the darkness. I can't help but feel like I'm being watched. Even though I knew that no one else in the group noticed it, I couldn't shake the thought that I was that shadow's only target. Suddenly, I stopped, the feeling that I couldn't keep moving anymore came. Every step seemed to pull me deeper into the darkness. In my mind, images of that shadow, that giant presence that I couldn't understand, came rushing back. The cold began to seep into my skin, not from the outside but from inside me, from deep within my mind. That shadow, its tall and shadowy shape, still lingered around me, waiting for me to take one more step. Even though I couldn't see it clearly, I could feel that presence, like an invisible suction force pulling me closer. I couldn't take my eyes off that place, which I knew was not safe. But, for a moment, I felt forced to face it. A strange feeling arose within me, fear and curiosity driving me at the same time. I couldn't say a word, only the sound of my rapid breathing and the sound of footsteps walking through the dry leaves. Unable to stop, I continued walking, even though my steps became lost and filled with doubt. The cold seeped into my skin, making me feel paralyzed. Every time I turned my head, I felt the presence closer, moving quietly with me, not making a sound, but I knew it was there, waiting. Gradually, I was no longer sure of what I was experiencing. The scenery around me became strange, as if I was being pulled into another world, a world that was not human. I no longer recognize the trail, I don't recognize the familiar trees. That shadow, or something hidden in the darkness, changed this space, turning it into an incomprehensible place. When I stopped again, I once again felt that strange cold enveloping me. My mind began to whirl with unanswered questions. What really happened? How could there be such a figure in the dark? Why am I drawn towards it? Why can't I stop? Suddenly, a feeling of stillness enveloped me, not peace but a heavy stillness, as if this forest was silently waiting for me to do something. Even though there were times I looked back, I still saw that shadow, not moving, but getting a little closer. It felt like it was quietly watching me, quietly observing my every move, waiting for me to take another step into the darkness. Unable to leave this place, I knew I had to face it. But as I got closer, something strange happened. The shadow disappeared quickly, as if it had never existed. All I was left with was the deep darkness of the forest, and an inexplicable feeling of coldness. Even though I no longer have that form, I know that I cannot escape it. It wasn't just a ghost, but a part of this forest, a part of the darkness that I had unintentionally dragged into my life. And it will never leave, will always be here, in the darkness, in dreams, in indelible memories. Now, when I return to my house, the silent nights become even heavier. The wind blowing through the window and the darkness in the room made me feel uneasy. I can't shake the feeling that something is still here, watching me, and waiting to take me back to that place, the place where fear and darkness will never leave me. Every step I took in the forest made me feel more clearly the fear weighing heavily on my shoulders. The absolute silence of the night added to the tension, as if something was watching me from the shadows. The cold wind seemed to exhale from the darkness, causing each leaf to rustle, each gentle sound like a call from another world. I tried to move on, but my legs seemed to feel heavier, as if I were being pulled back. As my flashlight shined on the trunk of the oak tree where the spiral mark had been carved, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fear. That mark no longer glowed like the first time I saw it. Instead, it looked scorched, the grooves worn and dry. A chill ran down my spine as I remembered the moment that tall shadow stood right next to me, a shadowy and terrifying figure. Even though I couldn't see its face clearly, the feeling it left in me was truly indescribable in words. It was not an ordinary nightmare, but a terrifying presence, as if it were part of this forest. I took a step back, still holding the flashlight in my shaking hand, shining it through the dark spaces between the tree trunks. The fear grew stronger, and I began to feel like I was standing between two worlds. One world in which I tried to make sense of what was happening, and another world, in which I had no control, where invisible things were waiting to pull me in. Every step, every breath became more difficult, and I began to feel like I was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. As I slowly turned around, that feeling still stuck with me. A presence I couldn't explain, as if this forest had changed, had been deformed because I dared to enter it. That shadow, although not clearly visible, still existed in the air, as if everything around me knew of its existence. I wanted to turn back, wanted to leave this forest immediately, but something inside me prevented me. Curiosity, or maybe fear, kept me walking, searching for answers, even though I knew each step would bring me closer to that darkness. My tension continued to increase. Every time I turned around, I felt like someone was watching me, quietly, just waiting for me to make a small mistake. The rustling sounds from the branches were not the wind, but something, an invisible creature moving around me. Sometimes, I think I hear a whisper, a vague sound from behind, but when I turn around, there's nothing but darkness and the trees standing silently. I started to feel tired, not from running, but because something mental was dragging me down. The more I tried to run, the more I felt like I was sinking into a land with no way out. When I stopped again, I saw only silence, a horrifying silence that made it impossible for me to breathe. Under the dim moonlight, the tree branches stretched out like hands, forming an invisible maze. Every step I took made me feel like I was sinking deeper into darkness. But after standing still for a while, I felt like something had changed in the space around me. That shadow, which I couldn't see clearly in the dark night, seemed to be coming closer. Maybe I even knew this would happen. A strange feeling invaded my mind, that it was waiting for me to return, waiting for me to continue walking into the darkness. I couldn't explain it, but the fear inside me arose stronger than ever. I turned around and ran out of the forest, not daring to look back again. I gasped in my head, and I felt the cold night surrounding me. I didn't know what I was running from, but I was sure of one thing: the forest, that shadow, didn't let me go that easily. That night, when I got home and locked the door, I sat in the dark, the only light coming from a dim desk lamp. Everything around me was calm, but in my heart, the memories of that shadow kept coming back. The eyeless mask, the tall figure, the dense silence, all of these things seemed to haunt me, unable to escape. I wondered if I had really left the forest, or if I had entered a world from which I could not return. Over the following nights, I saw that figure again in my peripheral vision, something dark and tall, standing quietly, as if waiting for me to look back. I know it's still there somewhere, and perhaps, I can never escape that presence. Every night, as the darkness lengthened, I felt something in the air, a presence that I couldn't shake. Even though I closed the windows and locked all the doors, I still felt like I was being watched. When I looked outside, the deserted streets seemed overwhelmingly silent. The atmosphere in my house, although warm and safe, had a strange stillness, as if nothing was happening out there. But in my mind, there is still a lingering feeling, as if that shadow is still here, out there, waiting for me. I try to do everything normally. I continued my daily work, meeting friends, but every night, my mind was caught up in inexplicable images. Shadows lingering out of sight, strange sounds in the air, all of these things kept haunting me. Occasionally, I thought I heard a whisper, a soft voice calling my name from the darkness, like that first time in the forest, but every time I tried to turn around to look, there was nothing but silent darkness. Recently, I returned to that forest, even though I was full of contradictions. I couldn't help but feel that I had imagined it all, that I was so stressed and tired that what I saw was just a hallucination. But another part of me thought I had to face it, had to go back to verify whether I was really facing something supernatural, or simply my mind was too disturbed. So one evening, I stood at the entrance to the forest, my legs still shaking. The uneasy feeling in my heart made it impossible for me to convince myself that this was just a normal walk. The moon was high, the faint light filtering through the dense trees, and I felt it, that shadow, something still present in the darkness, even though I couldn't see it clearly. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my mind, and walked into the forest again, my flashlight drawing a thin line of light on the ground, illuminating the tree stumps and branches. I felt my heart pounding, every step seemed like a challenge to myself. Strange sounds began again, the rustling of dry leaves, the sound of twigs crumbling under my feet, and I felt an invisible pull, as if something was waiting for me in the darkness. I pointed my flashlight into the surrounding space, but saw nothing but oak trees standing tall and silent. Everything seemed harmless, but the strange feeling, the vague fear, still stuck with me, rising every time I turned around. This time, I decided to go deeper into the forest, to the place where last time I saw the spiral mark carved on the tree. The cold wind swept past, rustling the leaves, and I felt a chill run down my spine. When I got close to where the spiral mark was, I noticed that it was still there, but this time it wasn't glowing like before. It looked dry, as if scorched, and everything around it was dark. I couldn't stop, and my feelings of guilt, doubt, and confusion rose strongly. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a tree branch breaking. A loud and sudden noise from behind made me jump. I turned around, my flashlight shining on no one. I stood frozen, my body tense as if I had just entered a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I can't explain it, but I feel that presence, something is here, in the darkness, waiting for me, watching my every move. And before I could do anything, I heard a voice, soft and whispering, like a cold wind blowing past my ears. At that time, I no longer had the strength to continue facing this. I turned around and ran, not thinking about anything else. Every step I took echoed in the silence of the forest, as if I was running away from something I couldn't catch. My breathing was heavy, and when I exited the forest, I only felt an emptiness in my heart. That presence, even though I escaped, did not disappear. It's still there, inside me, in the dark, waiting for the next one. Day after day, I tried to bury myself in work, in daily conversations with colleagues, and forced smiles when I met my neighbors. I knew that I had to maintain a normal appearance, so that things wouldn't be discovered, but the fear kept rising inside me. Every time night falls, I feel uneasy, as if something is still waiting, still lurking around me, in the shadows that I cannot escape. The first night I returned home after going into the forest, the atmosphere in the house was still strange. I closed all the windows and locked the door carefully, but a cold feeling kept taking over the room. The soft sound of the wooden door as I closed it startled me, and I saw my image in the mirror blurred again, not me as usual, but something, a familiar shadow standing behind me. My eyes saw clearly, even though I knew no one was there. At that time, I couldn't understand what I was doing, but my legs stood still, my heart pounding as if I couldn't escape the tension. Day after day, the anxiety does not stop. At night, I have to turn on the lights in the house. The light is weak but enough to make me feel safer. But as that faint light shined into the darkness, part of me felt like it was only inviting the evil back. Every time the wind whistled through the window, I imagined that figure standing nearby outside. The rustling sound of trees made me turn around, but there was nothing but long shadows on the ground. I wonder if I'm really living in a world where reality has been warped, or if I'm just indulging in my own nightmare. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night, cold sweat drenching my body. I heard a muffled sound, like a chant, coming from outside the window. That cold feeling arose in me again. I couldn't breathe, my chest was tight. A strong feeling of fear made me lie motionless, eyes wide open looking into the darkness. The air in the room felt thick and heavy, and I could clearly feel the presence of something nearby. The chanting sound continued, each note lingering, dark and menacing. At that moment, I turned on the flashlight and quickly scanned the room. My heart stopped beating when I saw a mark on the window glass. It was a faint spiral, exactly like the one I'd seen on a tree trunk in the forest. Cold sweat broke out, a terrible feeling overwhelmed me. That trace is still there, and it seems to be engraved in my mind. I cannot dispel its image, no matter how hard I try. The next day, I didn't dare go to work. I just sat in my house, desperately searching for a logical reason for all that had happened. I looked up documents about folklore and strange phenomena, but couldn't find any answers. Instead, I saw stories like mine, of strange apparitions and mysterious tracks, but nothing certain. Everything just makes me feel more confused and insecure. I started to feel like I was losing control. The feeling that some invisible force was watching me grew stronger every day. Every step I take, I clearly feel its presence. Any small movement, any sound startled me. Sometimes I feel like I'm being pulled into another world where I can't escape. That silhouette, that spiral mark, all of it haunts me. One evening, as I stood at the window, looking out, I felt something change again. A vague movement, something looming in the darkness. The light from the street lamp shined in, and I saw a figure standing among the trees, a motionless figure. That was the figure I saw in the forest, an inexplicable presence. At that moment, I couldn't move, I just stood there, looking at it, as if I was sucked in. After a while, the figure disappeared, but I couldn't erase it from my mind. Every night after that, I heard strange sounds, whispers like a call. Every time I hear it, I feel drawn in, as if an invisible force is pulling me, pushing me back to where it all began. I couldn't escape the feeling that I had stumbled upon something incomprehensible, and now it had followed me into this life, inseparable. The long nights that followed I couldn't sleep, even though I tried to get back to my daily routine. I woke up in the middle of the night, heard the wind whistling through the door, and felt its coldness creep into my body, through the thin blanket. Even though my bedroom was surrounded by high walls, I still felt like something was quietly observing me from the darkness. Every little movement, every squeak of the window startled me, as if someone was standing right behind me, waiting to enter. I started to doubt myself. Am I too stressed? Maybe what I felt was just a combination of fatigue and anxiety, and my mind was creating hallucinations from what I experienced in the forest. But just as I thought that, I heard whispering again. Softly, almost imperceptibly, but clearly. That voice was the same as before, as if it was calling my name, softly but undeniable. I couldn't understand, and my body immediately reacted, my heart pounding, my hands cold. There was a moment when I wondered if I was living in a world where reality and illusion had merged, where the lines between the two were gradually becoming blurred. I cannot know. I couldn't stop thinking about it, about that shadow, about the inexplicable tracks I'd seen in the woods, and about the feeling that it was still close to me. No matter how hard I tried to explain, I couldn't deny that something strange was going on. One evening, I went out again, this time not for work or any reason. I just felt a strange urge to go back there, back to the forest, where I had seen the glowing spiral, where I had first come face to face with a presence I couldn't understand. Night had fallen, and even though it was raining lightly, I went out, carrying a flashlight and a strange faith that I would find the truth. The path in the forest was dark, the flashlight was only enough to illuminate a small part of the path. Every step made me feel like I was entering another space, where everything was strangely quiet, where nothing could be explained. The sounds around me, whether it was just the rustling of leaves or the sound of the wind, were strangely amplified, making me feel like something was watching me. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was walking into a trap, and I didn't know if I could ever get back out. As I walked deeper into the forest, I suddenly noticed a change in the air. Everything seemed to become quieter, with no noise from insects or any other creatures. I turned around, but saw only darkness. Suddenly, a figure appeared, like a person standing under a tree, tall and shadowy in the weak light of a flashlight. That feeling was familiar, but I couldn't believe my eyes. The shadow didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stood there, as if waiting for me to come closer. My heart was pounding in my chest, every step made me feel like I was moving deeper into nothingness. I couldn't take my eyes off that figure, even though I wanted to turn around and run away. Part of me advised me to face it, to find out the truth, but the other part screamed at me to leave, to run away immediately. Despite my fear, I stepped closer. When my flashlight shined on the figure, it disappeared instantly, leaving only complete silence. The strange feeling is still there, clinging to me. My flashlight suddenly went out, and in the dim darkness, I heard a very soft whisper, like last time, but this time it seemed clearer, almost real. It called my name again. Those moments felt like a century. I couldn't do anything but stand still, feeling trapped in a space where everything was inexplicable. Something is waiting for me, but I don't know what it is. After a while, I turned around and started running, not daring to look back, not daring to look. When I got home, I felt that presence around me again, as if it was still watching my every move. Even though I couldn't see anything clearly, I could feel it, as if something was still waiting for me, somewhere in the darkness. I can't shake that feeling, even if I close all the windows and lock all the doors. The feeling that I can never truly escape that presence still sticks with me, a reminder that there are things in this world that are beyond my ability to understand. A subtle intrusion into my awareness, which I cannot explain. Every night, no matter how hard I tried to lock the door and turn on the lights in the house, I couldn't get rid of the feeling of being watched. That strange feeling always makes me wake up in the middle of the night, cold sweat drenching my body, my heart beating so hard it feels like it's about to burst out of my chest. Every time I turned to look into the darkness, whether in my room or through the window, I felt something lurking, waiting for a moment to enter. There were nights when I tried to convince myself that everything was just an illusion, that I was too tired and stressed, but the heavy silence still surrounded me, making it even more impossible for me to quell the anxious thoughts. I started leaving the lights on all night, even when I went to sleep. Because in my heart, I know that the light is my only protection from the inexplicable darkness. But the strange thing is, on windless nights, I still hear whispers. These were not natural noises of wind or animals, but soft, vague sounds, as if someone was calling my name from somewhere. Sometimes, the sound seemed very close, as if someone was standing right behind me, waiting for me to turn around. Every time I hear that sound, my heart chokes. I turn around but there's nothing but darkness. I can't continue living like this. Every day I feel myself sinking deeper into a state of reverie, between confusion and extreme fear. In the end, I decided to find a way to explain everything, to face what I had experienced in the forest. I decided to go back, hoping that this time I would find the truth, or at least be able to free myself from this fear. That night, I prepared carefully. Jacket, boots, flashlight, and a full suit. I couldn't hesitate any longer, because in my heart I knew that I needed to face it, needed to better understand that strange presence. My footsteps echoed in the quiet space of the house, and I headed out the door, where the dark forest was waiting to welcome me. The uncomfortable feeling arose in me again, but I had to walk. The forest trail looked different this time. The darkness seemed thicker, and I couldn't hear any noise other than my own footsteps. There were only the silent trees and the light from my flashlight, but each time a beam of light passed through, I felt something else, something watching, waiting for the perfect moment to appear. After a while, I realized that the figure had returned. Every step I took made me feel like I was moving deeper into something inexplicable. The tracks on the ground, the broken tree branches, all led me to a place I didn't want to go. And then I saw it, that shape, tall, standing in the darkness, almost part of the forest, not a person, but some entity, shadowy and invisible, like an untouchable ghost. That shadow stood still, not moving, but I felt its presence very clearly. Every hair on my body stood up, my heart pounded, and chaotic thoughts surrounded my mind. But I can't run. It seemed like there was some invisible force stopping me. I stood there, looking at it, and then, again, I heard that voice, softly, whispering my name. But this time, it wasn't an invocation. It felt like an invitation, one I couldn't refuse. I stepped forward automatically, as if I had been hypnotized, as if my body had been guided by an incomprehensible force. As I got closer, I noticed that there was no life in the figure. It was just a shadow without a face, without any features. With each step closer, I felt a coldness radiating from it. It wasn't a natural cold, but a cold that made me feel like I was being swallowed by the silence, as if that shadow was eating away at the air around me. When I was only a few steps away from it, I couldn't move anymore. I stood still, unable to move forward. I could only feel the cold spreading in my body. At that moment, it lifted one hand, slowly reaching towards me, and in that moment, I felt like I was being sucked into a bottomless black hole. Everything seemed to slow down, and I couldn't breathe. My body no longer felt anything but cold and endless stillness. But when its hand touched me, a strong wave suddenly pushed me out of that darkness. I turned around and ran quickly back, not daring to look back. Everything around me became blurry, and when I looked back, the shadow had disappeared, as if it had never existed. But that feeling of terror is still there, attached to me as part of this existence. The next day, I returned home, but couldn't escape the feeling that something was still following me. The tracks in the forest, that figure, and the strange cold, all are still alive in my mind. No matter how much I tried to deny it, a part of me knew that I couldn't erase that presence from my life. The panic kept coming in waves, and I couldn't stop thinking about those strange ghosts, those unexplainable phenomena. A strange feeling welled up in me when I faced them, with the strange cold, with the soft breathing sounds in the silent space. I stood still, my legs seemed frozen, unable to move. Every beat of my heart seems to be beating in the silence of the darkness, like a sign that cannot be ignored. This time, I no longer had any doubts. I was faced with them, things I couldn't understand, that now seemed to surround me, tearing at my mind every minute. That night, when I was forced to walk through the dark hallway to get out, the feeling of being watched returned once again. Whether it was my footsteps on the floor, or the sound of the door creaking as it closed, it all became a warning in my heart. I was forced to face that presence, even though I knew, with every step, I was getting closer to the truth I couldn't deny. The path that led me into the yard that night was like a path into a nightmare. I looked around, the weak porch light was only enough to illuminate a small part, but the darkness was so dense, it seemed to swallow everything. I raised my camera, filled with determination to capture images of the strange things I encountered. My hands were cold and shaking, but I didn't dare stop. I took a deep breath, and started taking pictures of the surrounding space one by one. It seems that right after each photo, the silence becomes even thicker. Blurred figures that could not be clearly identified, strange sounds came from somewhere, but I couldn't figure out what it was. A slight wind blew, the trees rustled, and then suddenly I heard the sound of a violin ringing somewhere far away, the melodious notes entwining the air, making my heart tighten. The cold I felt was not just a change in the surrounding air, but a cold from deep within my soul, an inexplicable fear. I stood still, unable to move, as if an invisible force was holding me back. The photo I had just taken fell from my hand, and when I bent down to pick it up, a giant ghost appeared before my eyes. My eyes opened wide, but the image was too blurry, too far away to be accessible. I felt a cold wave run through my body, as if it was entering every fiber of my being. In that moment, I realized that things were not random. Those ghosts weren't just a figment of a tired person's imagination, they were part of something bigger, an invisible presence that could dominate my mind, keeping me trapped in a never-ending loop. Those figures weren't just calling my name, they were inviting me into their world, a place I could never leave. This feeling was like an invisible string pulling me closer, and despite all my efforts to leave, I kept coming back, facing them. I wanted to understand better, but perhaps a part of me realized that I would never escape that presence, that those images would forever remain in my mind, in my life, as part of a memory that could not be dismissed. Finally, I turned away, filled with fear and doubt, and I knew that from now on, I could no longer live peacefully like before. The ghosts of that night not only haunted me in my dreams, they became a part of me, a reminder that there are things in this world that we can never fully understand, and sometimes, we can only live with them, even in fear, even in pain. Even though I returned to daily life, that strange feeling still stuck with me. Unseen ghosts, unexplainable whispers, and a strange coldness that followed me like a shadow wherever I went. Sometimes, I still hear vague noises, like the murmur of invisible waves in space, seemingly waiting for me to return, to recreate what I experienced in the forest. I tried to continue life as usual, but the long sleepless nights, irregular breathing sounds, and confused looks in the mirror couldn't make me forget. Images of that tall, faceless shadow still haunt me every time I look in the mirror or whenever I'm alone in a dark room. I couldn't understand whether those figures were a product of my exhausted imagination or if they were truly part of another world, a world that I couldn't access, but which I was drawn to every time I tried to delve into its mysteries. One night, after I had gone through a stressful day at work and kept thinking about what I had seen, I decided to go out and take a walk alone in the park near my house, trying to regain some peace of mind. But when I stepped into the darkness of the park, that feeling came back, as if the darkness was right behind me, just a few steps away. The ice-cold air made me shiver, and the sound of the wind whistling through the trees sounded like someone whispering. Suddenly, I stopped, my hands were cold, my mind was foggy. An intense feeling that I was being watched, not from behind, but from the very space around me, made me feel like I was surrounded. As the park's lights shined through a dark spot, I caught a glimpse of someone standing quietly in the distance, almost indistinguishable in the darkness. I swallowed hard, my legs felt like they were about to give out, but I forced myself to keep walking. When I turned back, that figure was no longer there, but the feeling of being watched was even clearer. I started running, not because I was afraid of that figure, but because of another fear, the fear of not knowing what really existed in this space, in the black darkness of my mind. A few days later, I returned to the park, not to roam, but to search for an answer. I can't continue living like this. The paranoia, the memories of darkness, of shadowy figures are still like pincers squeezing my mind. When I got there one evening, the cold feeling once again enveloped me. But this time, I didn't back down. I can't keep running away. I held up my flashlight, illuminating every dark corner, hoping that I would see something that would explain what I had been through. And then, I saw it again, that silhouette. This time, I didn't back down. I stared at it, feeling the coldness radiating from it. I couldn't say anything, couldn't react. It stood there, silent, not moving, not present, just a strange shadow standing in the darkness, staring at me. And I know I can't continue living like before. Finally, I stepped forward, not letting fear control me anymore. When I got closer, that figure suddenly disappeared, like a wave, leaving only a silent and cold space. I stood there in a cold sweat, my heart still racing, but at least I was facing it. Still, I know that I can't completely shake it off. Appearances, whispers, strange events, they are all a part of me. The ghosts of my past will always exist, indelible, inexplicable, and will probably always haunt me in my dreams, in every darkness, and in every sleepless night. But at least I faced it, and somehow, I realized that sometimes, we cannot change the past, we can only learn to live with it. Still, my mind couldn't stop racing, and with every step I took, I felt as if someone was watching, not from in front, but from the very space around me. It felt like an invisible force was pressing down on everything, making the air in the cabin feel heavier, as if every breath was stuck in my throat. Although nothing apparent happened, I felt an inexplicable presence, as if this room, this plane, held a secret that I could not access. At that moment, I turned back to look into the cockpit, and for a brief moment, I saw a faint light reflected on the screen, not from me, but from an indistinct figure, standing silently in the distance. I suddenly felt like I was no longer the only person in this room. There was no sound, just a heavy silence, as if everything was blocked, paused for an uncertain moment in time. I tried to breathe calmly, reminding myself that this was just a visual effect or some technical problem. But the feeling in my heart cannot be dispelled. At this moment, I noticed that the space around me seemed to have changed. Everything becomes more blurred, no longer as clear as before. Shadows kept hovering in the periphery of my vision, making it impossible for me to stop thinking about them. Every second that passes is like a challenge, making me feel more confused. At that moment, I turned around and looked toward the hallway again, this time to make sure there was nothing strange. But no, everything remains the same. No one, nothing changes. But the feeling of being watched still cannot be dismissed. Something, or someone, is still there, lurking in the darkness. I stood there, clutching my handheld camera in my hand, as if that would be the only way I could cope with what was happening. A feeling of stillness prevailed, and everything around me seemed like a blurry curtain slipping past my eyes. Even though I tried to walk, tried to stay calm, my steps still could not escape that strange presence, a presence that could not be seen, but could be felt. Every gentle noise in the air made me shiver, and I felt like I was trapped in an inexplicable situation. As I passed the empty seats in the cabin, I couldn't help but feel that they had witnessed something, something not of this world, figures trapped in this space, silently observing. My tension seemed to increase more and more, and I realized that the truth was not a coping understanding, but the continuation of a phenomenon for which I could find no explanation. With every step I took, I felt that cold, the cold not from the air, but from what was lurking in the darkness. That feeling makes me unable to stop worrying about what will come next. The doors in the cabin, the walls, the lights, all seem to be part of an invisible net surrounding me, making it impossible for me to escape. I can't stop. I can't say what I feel. My hands were shaking, and I didn't know what I was doing. I just kept walking in the dark, trying to find a sign, a clue, to explain all these strange things. But I know, there is one thing that I cannot change. Those figures, those whispers, that coldness, they all have a part in this life that I cannot fully explain. And as the night gradually fell, I realized something. The presence of these incomprehensible things will forever be a part of my life. Late one night, when the space around me became so quiet that I could hear my own breathing, I realized that fear was no longer just a natural reaction to darkness or strange phenomena. It has become a part of my life, something inseparable. That feeling of being watched is no longer an illusion. I know that something is there, always there, patient and waiting. When I entered my small room, everything seemed to change. The window was still accidentally open, the wind blew gently in, bringing with it strange sounds that I couldn't explain. The rustling sounds of leaves, the cracking sound of small branches on the ground, all are like predetermined sounds, a part of this life that I cannot escape. I feel its presence, like a ghost, always lurking in every corner of the house. Nothing is real, but neither is it fake. Everything has its presence. I tried to change things, tried not to pay attention to what was happening, but every time I looked in the mirror, I saw my reflection blur, as if there was another figure standing next to me. I couldn't see it clearly, but I felt it there, looking at me, waiting for me to turn around and face it. Fear kept me from taking my eyes off that shadow, even though I knew it wasn't something that could be easily overcome. One night, after I felt tired and exhausted from the endless nightmares, I decided to return to the place where it all began, the forest, where darkness once enveloped me. I felt the need to go back there, to face what I had left behind, to know that I was not a fugitive. But when I returned, I didn't find the peace I imagined. It is not a liberation, but a challenge. I couldn't help but feel the presence of something that had followed me home, still clinging to me. The night sky was gloomy, no stars were shining, and the trees were silent around me, as if they were holding some secret that I couldn't discover. Every step in the dark made me feel like I was lost in another space, a space where fear and silence dominated. Sometimes, I hear strange noises, as if someone is moving in the dark, looking at me from a hidden corner. I can't escape the feeling of being watched. When I returned to my room, I realized that darkness had followed me into the house, it had invaded my space. Shadows hovered in the room, drawing a blurry outline like indelible obsessions. I wonder if I can live with this, with the fear always present within me, or if I will be consumed by it, like those before me, who left indelible marks in the darkness. No matter what, I know one thing for sure, I can't go back to my old life. What I've been through, the figures I've met, all have changed me. They are not just vague memories, but a part of me, a part of the world that I cannot explain. These ghosts have become a part of me, and I will never be able to escape them. They will always be there, following me wherever I go, waiting to continue haunting me in my dark nights and restless dreams. Although I tried to create peace in my life, there was no denying that something had infiltrated my existence. I feel it not only in quiet moments, but also in every breath, in every sound around me. Something invisible but palpable, like a gentle wave passing through the air, invisible, but the heaviness it carries is clearly felt. Every time night falls, I no longer feel the peace like before. The distant flickering street lights no longer seemed strong enough to dispel the darkness, and I found myself standing quietly again, feeling the gentle breeze through the window. The strange images and shadows still linger in my mind, as if they never really left. Even on clear mornings, when the first sunlight shines through the window, I feel an inexplicable heaviness in the air, as if everything has yet to be freed from the darkness. Day by day, I continued to live, but I couldn't completely shake off the feeling that something was always watching me. Although I tried to run away, tried to leave the past behind, I realized that what happened in the forest was more than just faint memories. They have left their mark on me, an inseparable connection, and it seems that the more I try to escape, the more I feel them growing, invading me, hitting my mind with a haunting patience. Some nights, I find myself standing in the mirror, my eyes no longer reflecting myself but instead the silhouettes of things I cannot explain. Blurred spots, empty eyes, blurred images but still imprinted in my memory. I felt like I was lost in another space, a space where life and death blended, where old ghosts still lingered and followed my every move. Once again, I decided to return to the place where it all began, the forest. But this time, I wasn't just looking for the truth, but facing the very fear that had followed me all this time. I thought that if I could face those apparitions, if I could look them straight in the eye and realize that they were no longer a part of me, perhaps I would be freed. I returned to the trail where the strange figures first appeared. The sun is setting, and the air is gradually becoming cold, the cold of autumn is coming. I felt the thick silence of the forest surrounding me. No bird sounds, no animal sounds. Only the sound of my footsteps, and my own breathing. That feeling cannot be described in words. It is like an invisible net, surrounding me, covering me, making me feel like I am prey, being hunted by things that I cannot see. I went deeper into the forest, pointing my flashlight forward, but the light only illuminated a very small part of the vast darkness. Every time I stopped to look around, the feeling of being watched became stronger. Even though I know that there's no one here, this feeling still can't leave me. And then, I saw it, that figure, standing in the place I had first met, where the haunting memories began. The shadow stood there, tall and hazy, in the dim light of the flashlight. But this time, it didn't disappear when I saw it. It stood silently, not moving, but I felt its strong presence. I can't keep moving forward, and I can't go back either. My eyes couldn't leave it, as if we were facing each other, just a glance apart. As I stood there, I realized that not all I saw was an illusion. Part of me knew that those figures were real. They have followed me from the forest, and they will never let me go. They may disappear for a while, but they will always return, always waiting for me in the darkest place of my mind, where I cannot escape. And I understand that maybe I can't live a normal life anymore. These ghosts are not just indelible memories, but a part of me, a part of this world. And I've learned that, once we encounter something like this, there's no way to completely escape. Those figures will always be there, in my dreams, in the darkness, in the silence, waiting to continue to haunt me. I stood there, in the dim darkness of the forest, feeling the coldness of that figure enveloping me. It didn't move, there wasn't a sound. There was only suffocating silence. Even though I knew I was facing fear, part of me didn't want to look at it, didn't want to continue facing that shadow, but I couldn't help but look. My eyes seemed to be drawn, glued to that image, unable to leave. In that moment, I realized that it was not just a shadow but a part of me, a part one had tried to hide, but now it had emerged. I felt it looking at me, not with hatred, but with a deep understanding, as if it knew me better than I knew myself. The things I've been through, the fears in my soul, are all being illuminated in those invisible eyes. And in that moment, I realized that I couldn't keep running away. I wanted to call, but my throat was tight. Something inside me screamed for me to run, for me to leave immediately. But another part of me told me to stand back, to face it, to understand that this fear could not overcome me forever. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. My arms were still shaking, holding the flashlight to the point where I felt a sharp pain in my fingers. I couldn't turn back, I couldn't run away, but I also couldn't keep moving towards that shadow. My mind wanted to find the answer, but my heart told me to stop, to accept the fact that sometimes, there are things that we cannot explain. Memories of the forest, of the silhouettes that scared me, now come rushing back like a wave. I don't know where I am standing, I don't know if I can get out of that shadow or not. It feels like an endless circle is squeezing me. Part of me wanted to give up, but another part wanted to face this again, to break the fear I had harbored all this time. Suddenly, I heard a sound, a sigh, as gentle as the wind. I turned around, my eyes wide open, and I saw another image, a vague movement, as if the shadow was slowly disappearing into the air, as if it were just part of the darkness. The cold feeling inside me is no longer there, but I know that that shadow is still there, in some dark corner of my soul. Part of me felt relieved, but another part couldn't escape the feeling that something was still watching me, no matter how hard I tried to forget. The following nights, I kept waking up, feeling that presence in the quiet space around me, as if it was waiting for me, to continue playing this game of tag. Even though I tried to explain everything, tried to explain that it was just a product of my imagination, a part of me knew that there were things for which no reason could be explained. And in my quietest moments, I realized that there are things in this world that we cannot understand, shadows that we cannot dispel, no matter how many reasonable reasons or explanations we have. And I understand that there are fears that cannot be avoided, they are just waiting for a moment to return, reminding us of the fragility of the world we live in. A suffocating feeling enveloped my entire body, as if the air in the cabin was so tight that I couldn't breathe. Time seemed to stop, every second became endless, and in my head, questions kept circling. What are they? Why do we see them? Can they follow us? Panic began to take over my mind. Although I tried to suppress it, the presence of those figures, with their blurred and invisible features, kept pushing me away from the truth. Every little noise in the cabin, every gentle movement, startled me. The passengers around me started to feel tense. Occasionally someone asked me if I was okay, but my voice was no longer convincing. I could only nod, trying to stay calm, but deep inside, I felt panic rising. The intercom system beeped again, then went silent, leaving only an eerie silence. Something is wrong, and I can't understand it. When I glanced at the screen again, that figure still stood there, unmoving, unchanging, as if it was looking right through me, penetrating every thought and every emotion. It is not a ghost or a temporary phenomenon, it was something that actually existed in this space, in this airplane cabin, and it seemed connected to our very existence. We are being watched. I felt the coldness seeping into my heart, a coldness that was not brought by the outside air. "Captain," I said, my voice shaking, "we need to do something now. I can't go on like this." The pilot just nodded, his expression pale and worried. Although there was no clear explanation, he hurriedly checked the feed again, tried shutting down and restarting the system, hoping that the strange images could be erased. But when the screen lit up again, I saw the silhouettes again, stronger, clearer, as if they were watching us from an invisible distance. I felt the tension in the air, every breath, every step of the passengers around me became heavy, as if we were entering an inexplicable space. I don't even dare to look at the screen anymore, I can only keep my eyes directed out the window, where darkness covers, swallowing all light. I could feel that figure slowly getting closer, it was only a matter of time before it flooded into our reality. The feeling that time is being distorted becomes clearer than ever. The minutes passed as if they dragged on forever, as if some kind of supernatural energy was controlling everything around us, deflecting it all. The world beyond the plane, the passengers, and even the crew, all seem to become part of a game we can't escape. I can't grasp reality anymore. Questions, doubts, all turned into an uncontrollable fascination. Why do I feel this way? Do they really exist, or are they just a product of the imagination? But one thing is clear, no matter how hard I try to explain it, is that they are here, right in this cabin, and they have no intention of leaving. Even though everything had returned to normal according to the technical indicators, the air inside me was still heavy and thick like a layer of dark clouds. I tried to breathe gently, trying to dispel the numbing feeling that still clung to my body, but nothing could ease the tension in my chest. When all the passengers had left the plane, I remained alone in the cabin, quietly looking out the window, where the dim airport lights reflected light onto the cold ground. The hallway light was still flickering, causing me to turn around again, my anxiety rising. In that moment, I suddenly realized, I couldn't be sure that they had really left. Will those silhouettes really disappear when the plane lands? Or are they just waiting for the right moment to return? I don't know, but their feelings still follow me, holding my mind, unable to escape. Looking at the cockpit screen again, I wondered if we were seeing the truth or just a paranoia, a hallucination triggered by excessive stress. The strange signs still haunted me, even though the aircraft system had confirmed there was no problem. It's a reasonable explanation, but can I believe it? Stepping off the plane, I still felt the tension building up in my body. Strange feelings, inexplicable apparitions, still haunt me. I felt as if someone was watching me from afar, still following my every step. Night had fallen, and I looked around again, feeling cold all over. I wonder if I'm really free from them, or if it's just temporary. As I left the airport, the cool night air only seemed to increase my tension. Even though I was back in a familiar place, a place I called home, my mind still couldn't shake the feeling that something out there was waiting for me, waiting for the moment to leave its mark. That feeling is still there, although nothing is clear. I wonder if those figures are really part of this world, Or do they come from another place, another reality that I cannot understand? Every time I close my eyes, I see those empty faces, feel the coldness, as if they were still there, in the dark. I can't tell anyone about this. People would think I was paranoid, but deep down, I knew something strange had happened. Had I truly encountered a force beyond human understanding? Or is it all just an illusion? The answer is still unclear, and perhaps I will never know. But I know one thing, those figures will not leave me easily. They are imprinted on my mind, and they will stay there, whether I like them or not. I stood still, waiting in tormented silence, my steps seeming to have become heavier than ever. The feeling of an invisible presence tormented me. I didn't even dare to breathe loudly, afraid that my breath would break this eerie stillness. The air in the new room was so stuffy and heavy, as if this house itself had deliberately surrounded me. The metallic smell lingered in the air, making it impossible for me to dispel that unpleasant feeling. At first, I told myself that everything was just a result of prolonged stress, that I was haunted by strange events on the flight. But every time I opened my eyes, I encountered that strange feeling, the feeling that someone was standing right behind me, even though I couldn't see them. Especially at night, when I tried to sleep, I felt nightmares invade my mind, empty silhouettes and darkness dancing before my eyes, impossible to avoid. I tried to push those thoughts away, but every time I walked through the hallway, every time I heard the wind rushing through the doors, I felt some force, something not of this world, watching me. Even though I tried to find a reasonable reason and reassure myself, I couldn't escape the feeling that I had brought something with me from that flight. Those silhouettes, their coldness, not only existed in the space of the plane, but followed me into this house, continuing to haunt me, quietly following my every step. Every time I enter this house, I feel a strange presence. I tried to get used to the new space, but every hidden corner, every small sound in the house echoed memories of the flight. Those figures, those soulless looks, those haunting whispers made me unable to feel at peace. Especially when night comes, the room becomes terrifyingly silent, there is no sound other than the whirring wind outside. Sometimes I think I hear gentle footsteps, even though I know for sure that I am alone. One night, when I woke up in the middle of the night, I felt someone standing right outside the window. I slowly approached, cautiously looking through the gap in the curtain. The scene outside was just a dark space, nothing different, but I still felt like someone was watching me. That feeling happened again and again, and I couldn't understand it. Have I lost my sanity, or are the ghosts I saw on that flight really coming back to haunt me? I can't leave, I can't escape. That feeling is like a scar on my mind, a memory that cannot be erased. And although I could feel that presence, I couldn't see it. But I know that one day, it will find a way to reappear, maybe in dreams, or maybe in reality. That feeling is indelible, clinging to me like a ghost that cannot be dispelled. That feeling lingered, as if something was following me, watching me from every corner of the apartment. Every night, I feel like there's someone standing right outside my bedroom door, even though I'm sure no one is there. Strange, inexplicable noises came from the walls around me like strange shadows that I couldn't shake. Some nights, I wake up in the middle of the night, feeling a presence in the room, even though the room is still completely deserted. I can't clearly distinguish between reality and fantasy, I only know that fear grows stronger every day. And then, there are nights, when I try to sleep, I have the feeling that someone is standing near the bed, quietly watching me. Sometimes I can feel cold breath on the back of my neck, something threatening right behind me. It was a very real feeling, as if an invisible hand was touching my skin, cold and threatening. I closed my eyes and tried to take a deep breath, telling myself that I was just imagining it, that this was stress-induced paranoia. But one night, when I woke up, I realized something strange. Although the room remained quiet, something different loomed in the air. The room suddenly became so cold that I felt like I was standing in a refrigerator. The shadows in the room seemed to be moving, there was a change in the air that I couldn't explain. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel the figure getting closer, and when I opened my eyes, I saw that the space around me had changed, as if someone had just walked through it. From that day on, every time I left the apartment, I could not avoid the feeling of being followed, monitored from an invisible place. Even if I close the door tightly, lock all the windows, and check all the safety latches, I still cannot escape that feeling. Especially at night, when the space becomes strangely silent, I always feel like someone is standing outside the window, looking in through small gaps. And those images, those distorted shadows, those strange sounds, still haunt me. Sometimes, in my sleepy moments, I think I hear a whisper, as if someone is calling my name from somewhere in the apartment. But when I turned around, there was no one. All is darkness and silence. But I know, something has changed since I moved here, and I can't shake the feeling that something invisible is following me, watching my every move, lurking in the shadows of this house. Terror welled up inside me, and no matter how hard I tried to reason, I couldn't escape the feeling that there was something lurking in the darkness, right in my own bedroom. I breathed heavily, my eyes staring at the faint handprint on the headboard. It felt like an invisible hand had passed by, leaving a mark in the air that I couldn't erase. The room, once familiar and safe, now became a place where I could not feel secure. Even though I tried to stand up and walk around the room, every step I took was filled with anxiety, and I didn't dare to look back at that fingerprint again. I opened the window, breathing in fresh air from outside, but the feeling of fear still did not let me go. That cold feeling didn't just come from outside, but as if something invisible had spread into this space, penetrating my mind. Every movement I made now seemed weak, as if I had no control over my body. I turned back to look at the room. The streetlight outside the window was dim, but it couldn't reduce the darkness that surrounded me. That feeling was not an ordinary feeling, it was a presence, an invisible but very real force, threatening and imposing on me. I couldn't stop thinking about that fingerprint, about the silhouette of an old acquaintance in my dream. Everything is strangely connected, as if I am standing between two worlds. One is reality, the other is the ghosts of the night. Only when I started to return to bed did I realize I couldn't stop shaking. Questions flooded my mind. Am I haunted by paranoia? Or is there really something here, right in my room, that I can't understand? I had no answers, only a feeling of heaviness and fear, as if the shadows would never leave. And then, another night, when I turned off the lights and was about to fall asleep, I heard footsteps. Not from outside, not from noise from another apartment. It was the sound of footsteps coming from this very room, as if someone was moving in the darkness. I opened my eyes, and saw only darkness covering the room, no one there. There was nothing left but a feeling of tension and suffocation in this space, making me wonder if there was really something inexplicable waiting for me, or if all of this was just a mind game of my own making. But that undeniable feeling still sticks with me, in every darkness, in every step, in every breath that I cannot control. The feeling grew, an uncontrollable shiver, as I stood facing the bathroom mirror. My eyes caught a blur of movement, as if someone was standing right behind me. My heart was beating fast, and even though there was no one there, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I turned around quickly, hoping it was just a faint reflection of light, but no, there was no one. I gasped, and in that panic, I felt my eyes being drawn to the mirror, where my reflection seemed to be changing. The image in the mirror blurred, and once again, I saw the blurry silhouette of an old acquaintance in my dream, his face still blurred, his lips still moving and calling my name. The feeling of fear inside me arose again, as if he was standing right behind me, but when I turned around, there was nothing but empty space. A wave of coldness swept over me, and I couldn't control the feeling of shaking from inside. Every night, I feel increasingly strange phenomena. From nightmares to the feeling of being watched, it seems like no place is safe. I began to doubt myself. Was everything I experienced a delusion or an unexplainable reality? Handprints on the headboard, strange dreams, sounds that couldn't be heard but made me feel like someone was always near. On quiet nights, as I prepare to go to sleep, I hear the floor creaking under invisible footsteps. The noises were gentle but made me unable to calm down. I looked out the window, and the dim streetlights couldn't dispel this feeling. I tried to tell myself it was just nightmares, but as night fell, I couldn't help but feel someone standing outside, watching me. And then, suddenly, on a particularly quiet night, I heard a light tap on the window. My heart beat fast, my breathing was heavy. I turned around, but there was no one there except the pale light of the streetlights. I told myself that maybe I was too stressed, but the insecurity still wouldn't go away. That feeling of being watched didn't let me go, and I started to see things change before my eyes. That black shadow was always there, just out of sight, always waiting for a moment to step out and face me. Even though I tried to run away, even though I tried to close the door and lock everything, I knew that I couldn't erase the cold feeling and fear that followed me. One day, I decided that I had to face it. I need to understand what's really going on. I went online to search for information about strange phenomena and similar stories of people who had experienced the same feelings as me. But no matter how much I read, I couldn't find any satisfying answer. There's only one thing, that fear never seems to leave me, no matter where I am. With each passing day, I felt that obsession getting worse, like a ghost that couldn't be dismissed, haunting me even when I didn't think about it. Every step in this apartment feels like a challenge, and every night when I turn off the lights, the space becomes heavy, silently surrounding me. I began to feel an invisible force weighing on my every thought, something invisible yet omnipresent. On sleepless nights, I fell into strange dreams, where the walls became as soft as fabric, and the space around me began to undulate, as if in a hallucination. I used to try to find a scientific reason for everything. Maybe it was stress, fatigue, or just my imagination. But gradually, I couldn't deny that something truly strange, something inexplicable, was clinging to me. The feeling of being watched never stops, even when I go to work, even when I try to separate myself from this apartment. Footsteps, gentle noises in the air, always make me feel like someone is nearby. Sometimes I glance over my shoulder, feeling something pass through my vision, but when I look back, there's nothing. Just empty darkness. One day, I decided I had to leave. I cannot continue to live in this obsession. But before I left, I searched for an answer, a reason to explain everything. I found some documents about strange events happening in ancient buildings, unexplained phenomena, but they couldn't help but make me feel more secure. I began to suspect that the presence clung to me, no matter where I ran. When I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving something behind. Part of me feared that I had left a trace, an invisible impression that continued to follow. Meanwhile, my new apartment, where I had hoped to find peace, only made me feel like I was surrounded by vestiges of my past. Long, sleepless nights, shadowy figures and strange sounds, I don't know if they are hallucinations or truly part of a world I cannot explain. Once again, I looked into the mirror, and like an inevitable obsession, I saw the shadowy figure of an old acquaintance, standing right behind me. He didn't say anything, but I felt his presence clearly. I know that no matter how much I hide, this feeling will never leave me. It's still here, around me, silently waiting, quietly watching my every step. Every morning when I wake up, I feel as if a part of myself has been trapped somewhere, inside the old space, where those memories and presences still haunt. There always seems to be something different about the air around me. Sometimes, when I walk through the hallways in my new house, I feel a cold breath on the back of my neck, even though no one is there. Strange noises kept appearing, a small bang on the wall, a gentle wind blowing through the door, and sometimes, when I stopped, I heard something break, but when I turned around, there was nothing but darkness. I tried moving many times, not just because of this apartment, but because of the feeling of insecurity that followed me like a shadow. But every time I move to another place, I start feeling the same things. Sometimes I wonder if these phenomena are a product of fatigue, or maybe I'm just too sensitive to things. However, when I found strange tracks, faint silhouettes appearing in my peripheral vision, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't just a haunted person, but that something was actually following me. One time, when I went to a familiar coffee shop to escape these thoughts, I saw that the light there had become dim. The people around me began to fade away, and I found myself standing in a vast, limitless space. I felt my heart pounding, as if I was being chased, but not by someone specific, but by something invisible. Strange whispers began to echo in my head again, like the sounds I had heard in my dreams. Every day, I try to keep myself awake, trying not to let paranoia control me. But as I walked through the deserted streets, I felt something behind me, an inexplicable presence. Every time I turned around, there was nothing, but I couldn't erase the feeling that someone was looking at me, waiting for me from the darkness. I couldn't explain these strange feelings, but I began to realize that they weren't all due to fatigue or stress. Part of me began to believe that perhaps what I had witnessed, those figures, were not hallucinations. Maybe they were part of something larger, a presence from another world, an intrusion into a reality I couldn't understand. This fear, no matter where I run, will still follow me. And every night, when I look in the mirror, I see those eyes. Those eyes that I can't forget. Eyes looked at me from the darkness, quietly following my every step. Even though I tried to forget it all, that presence, like a wound in my soul, never truly faded. And then, one night, I decided to face it. I can't live in this obsession forever. I returned to the room I had tried to escape from, and I stood there, in the dark, facing something indefinable. Maybe, only when I face it can I find the answer. But in the darkness, I couldn't find the answer. I only found a shadow, a faint image staring back at me. And I realized that I may never understand what happened to me. But I know one thing for sure, that shadow, no matter how far I run, will never leave me. I continue to live in this apartment, each day passes like a never-ending psychological battle. Even though everything seemed normal, even though I could smile, talk, and act like a normal person, deep down inside I was always a feeling of tension, a feeling that I couldn't get rid of. That feeling is a quiet darkness, always waiting, always lurking at the edge of awareness, like an invisible wave but strong enough to make it difficult for me to breathe. Every night, when I lie in bed, that feeling returns. Strange knocking sounds from afar, gentle but steady, cool breezes passing by gave me goosebumps. Even though I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, there was no denying that something was wrong. The strange coldness wasn't due to the weather, and sometimes I felt as if someone was standing behind me, a presence I couldn't see but could definitely feel. It was always there, at the edge of vision, waiting, watching, never too obvious but always close enough to make me feel scared. I had sleepless nights, when the ghostly images returned, when the memories of that dream flashed in my head like a film that couldn't be turned off. I asked myself if it was just stress-induced paranoia or if something real was plaguing me. But even though I couldn't answer, I couldn't deny that strange feeling, that there was something beyond our understanding, something inexplicable but too obvious to ignore. Every time I passed through the hallway in my apartment, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were tired, but at one point I thought I saw something strange in the light, a slight wavering on the surface of the mirror, like the shadow of someone standing behind me. The shivers began again, and this time not from cold, but from deep insecurity. The noises in my apartment never seemed to stop, but they became familiar, as if they were waiting for my attention, as if they wanted me to realize that I was not alone. But I can't run away from this feeling anymore. It followed me, like a memory trapped in the silence of the room, like a shadow that never left me. Every night, when I tried to sleep, when I tried to forget, that feeling returned, an invisible presence, something untouchable but clearly there, strong enough to make me feel suffocated. The nightmares kept recurring, and every morning I woke up feeling like a part of me was stuck somewhere, between the dream and reality. Feeling insecure has become a part of me. This feeling, although inexplicable, felt extremely real and clear, like a psychological wound that I could not heal. No matter how much I tried to deny it, no matter how much I tried to find a logical reason for those strange events, I couldn't stop the feeling that there was something dark, invisible but felt, always lingering in my life. Every step in this apartment now contains a part of that fear. The feeling of invisible eyes always watching me, the strange sounds and blurred movements in space, the faint traces that could not be explained, all built an undeniable picture of another world, an incomprehensible force, watching me. Can I get out of this shadow? Or will it continue to follow me, until the end? The atmosphere in the room became so thick and still that I could clearly feel each heartbeat beating in my chest. My footsteps were quiet on the old wooden floor, my mind reeling with the explanations I created to repel the overwhelming fear. The dim light of the night lamp still flows down the wall, forming elongated shapes and casting strange shadows on the tile floor. But I couldn't escape the feeling that that shadow was not a reflection of myself. Once again, I looked into the mirror, trying to distinguish between my reflection and the shadow moving within. That figure only appeared for a short moment, but enough for me to feel it was watching me from the other side. I stood still, not daring to move, my eyes glued to the mirror as if I turned away, that shadow would rush out of the glass and touch me. The cold feeling came back again. It wasn't the air outside, but something coming from the depths of this room, something invisible but clear, an inexplicable fear. When I tried to look away from the mirror, I saw that the shadow was not only moving but seemed to be looking back at me, in a strange way, as if it was waiting for me to take it seriously. Now, the shadow is not simply a fleeting movement, but a clear and ambiguous presence. My eyes began to see strange details in it, opaque lines, a vague feeling as if it didn't belong in this space. It was an unusual reflection, as if the shadow wasn't mine. A wave of panic surged through me, and I knew I couldn't stand here forever. I stepped back, feeling the space in the room become cramped, as if that shadow was overwhelming every dark corner. I couldn't understand it, but the feeling became clearer and clearer. There was something in this room, something I couldn't see but could definitely feel. I turned around and walked out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest, my hands constantly shaking. Every step in the hallway of this apartment is like walking in a completely different space, a space where the rules of things no longer apply. The shadow still remained in my mind, continuing to cling, continuing to watch. And then, when I turned around, the light in the living room flickered again, as if on some sort of signal. It wasn't an ordinary light, but something strange, as if I was surrounded by an invisible force. The silence, the absence of sound, leaving only my footsteps and the surrounding stillness. The shadow, although I cannot see it, I know it is always there, a part of this space, a part of me. The air felt stuffy, as if the space around me was tightening little by little, with no way out. The mirror, which was just an ordinary object, now becomes a scary, ghostly object. My breathing became rapid, and in that moment, all I could hear was the pounding of my heart, as if it was trying to escape my chest. My eyes seemed to be sucked into the fog in the mirror, unable to leave, unable to escape something hidden deep behind the glass. As I got closer, I felt a wave of ice coldness, as if it were spreading from inside a mirror, covering me. That vapor was not only blurry, but it seemed to have its own life, a strange attraction that made me unable to take my eyes off it. Every step I took seemed to increase the tension in the space, and my feet could barely lift off the floor. I know I shouldn't come closer, but a part of me, a very small part, pushes me to do so. When I stood right in front of the mirror, my eyes squinted, trying to see through that thin fog. And then, amid the haze, I saw it, an indistinct figure, almost a ghost, passing through the mirror like a hidden shadow, swaying and fading. It made me feel like I was on the brink of something terrible, but unable to retreat. I couldn't take my eyes off that figure, even though every part of my being was warning me to run away immediately. The shadow continued to move, as if watching me, waiting for me to react. And then, in the most horrifying moment, I realized something. Not only was there that figure in the mirror, but I could also feel it right behind me. That shadow is not just a reflection, it was near me, surrounding me, waiting for the moment to overwhelm me completely. I wanted to scream, but my mouth felt like it was blocked by an invisible force. All my senses were numb, my hands were cold, I couldn't do anything but stand there, staring into the mirror. I felt a presence in the air, something about to break the veil of silence between me and the outside world. A feeling of utter confusion spread through me, as the shadow in the mirror seemed to be moving closer, entering my space. I can't breathe, I can't move. That presence threatened to sweep me into a different world that I did not understand, and my fear rose like a wave breaking the shore. The space in the room became opaque, as if a layer of dark clouds was covering everything. Every beat of my heart pounded in my chest, every breath I took became more rapid. I could only stand there, like a prisoner in my own apartment, unable to escape the shadow that was following me. And then, a strange noise rang out. It wasn't the familiar tapping sound from the pipes, but a noise from the mirror. A soft sound, as if something was moving behind the glass, slowly, deliberately. I know I can't stand here forever, but my feet feel like they're nailed to the ground and I can't walk. Somehow, I felt like everything in the room had become a part of that shadow, all caught up in an inexplicable presence. I want to run, but I can't. The shadow is waiting for me. And I knew, maybe I hadn't just seen it, but it was looking at me, waiting for me to face it, waiting for me to find out the truth about what was haunting me in this apartment. I feel like I can go on without that presence in my life. However, when I left the antique shop, a strange feeling still lingered in me, as if I had not truly escaped that shadow. Even after the mirror was taken away, I couldn't stop thinking about what happened. I cannot deny that something has stuck with me all this time, as if it has created an indelible mark on my mind. When I got home, I felt relieved, but also strange and empty. The strange feeling seemed to refuse to let go. Every time I look at the empty space in my apartment, I can't help but feel as if something is still there, hidden. Every night, when I turn off the lights, I feel like I can't completely relax, as if someone is still watching me in the dark. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night, a cold feeling covering my entire body. I looked around the room, only to see nothing but darkness. But there was a vague feeling in the air, as if I was being secretly watched by something. I could hear the light wind rustling outside the window, but the strange thing was that I felt it not only came from outside, but also from the space around me. Every noise seemed to increase the feeling of not being able to breathe in my chest. That feeling was no longer a mere paranoia. I began to realize that there are things in life that cannot be explained, things that sometimes, even if you want to, you cannot escape. Maybe I left a part of myself in that mirror, something that stuck to me and remained, no matter how hard I tried to get away from it. One day, when I was walking around the neighborhood, I came across someone in the old market. An old acquaintance whose name I don't remember, but I know that he has met me before. He looked at me, then looked into my eyes slowly, as if he was peering into my mind, understanding better than anyone what I was going through. Without saying a word, he just nodded, and I felt a strange connection, as if he also knew about what I was facing. That feeling came back again, the shadow of inexplicable fear. Every time I look into a mirror, whether it's a new mirror or a different one, I can't help but feel that presence, like a thin veil covering everything, always there, even though I can't see it clearly. That feeling never completely disappears, it is like a scar in the soul, a part of the past that cannot be erased. What I experienced was not just a nightmare, but a reality that I had to learn to live with. So I continued to live in my apartment, but every night when I went to bed, that feeling of insecurity resurfaced. The shadow in the mirror, the repeated name, the chill in the air, all reminded me that maybe I hadn't truly escaped what had happened. Even though I got rid of that mirror, I still can't leave the memories of it behind. With an eerie slowness, as if he were reaching out from the darkness, transcending the boundaries of space and time. The heaviness in the air became even thicker, as if the very air around me was being suffocated by his presence. I couldn't take my eyes off him, even though every nerve in my body wanted me to turn away, to run away, but I couldn't. My eyes were glued to that figure, and I clearly felt that there was a strange connection between us, as if he was looking into a deep part of my soul. Despite the panic roiling inside me, I couldn't move, couldn't name it. Something about his presence, about his form, just anchored me in place. My vision blurred and my mind wavered, but I couldn't leave my position. The words he whispered were like quiet rhythms, ignoring the cold that was covering me from the inside out. He repeated the name, a name I couldn't remember right away, but a strange feeling had already come over me. Each word repeats in space like a slow beat of time, as if it were not a word but a hissing sound, entering the deep layers of my head, where every memory and emotion is twisted. 1919, he repeated. My lips were dry, and I wondered if it was an instruction, a question, or an answer to something I didn't understand. He did not change position, but there was an imperceptible change in the space around us, as if the darkness around him rose, swallowing the other shapes in the room. A strange feeling rose within me, and I felt the presence more deeply, as if I was in the middle of a nightmare from which I could not wake. I couldn't see the specifics of his body, but his appearance became blurred in my mind, as if I'd been looking at something inexplicable for too long. I tried to close my eyes to banish the images, but even when I tried not to look at him, he was still there, in my own home, in my mind. The bleakness and haunting of that name, 1919, lingers around me like a haunting reminder. I felt like I was being pulled into an invisible trap from which I couldn't escape. That shadow, those whispers, they are not hallucinations. They really exist. Maybe I was stuck in some loop, a presence that clung to me, an indelible memory. The events of that night, that shadow, it was more than just a dream. It was something that followed me, and it would never leave me alone. I began to feel a heaviness in the air, as if time had stood still. Everything around me was a blur, passing slowly, emphasizing my every step as I approached the end of this surreal journey. A feeling of tension rose within me, as if something was whispering somewhere, in that space, but I couldn't pinpoint what exactly. Every sound from around us, whether it is the wind blowing through the trees or the chirping of insects, becomes strange and no longer familiar. I wondered if I was entering an endless nightmare, where all I saw were reflections of another world I couldn't reach, where those figures were no longer just imagination but something tangible, real, and waiting for me to enter. All my senses became hazy, no longer clear, as if everything in my vision was fading away, leaving only traces, faint signs of its existence. That shadow, that strange presence I had encountered, was no longer a faint illusion. It had become a part of me, and I could feel it from every corner of my mind, as if a fragment of it had attached itself to my soul. Every step I take, every breath I take, I clearly feel that presence waiting for me to look into itself, for me to see the truth that it has hidden. But then, when I tried to return to reality, when I tried to ignore those images and tried to quell that fear, it appeared in every corner, every shadow where I did not expect it. The feeling of surveillance, of inexplicable confinement, swirled around me. I cannot separate from it, no matter how hard I try. That fear, even though I can't see it, I feel clearly in every beat of my heart. All the shapes seemed to start blending together, and I didn't know where I really was anymore. The sounds around me became strange, as if I were standing in an invisible space, in a world whose rules were different from what I knew. The feeling of not being able to turn back, not being able to escape from the images that are following me, haunts me with every passing moment. In that moment, I didn't know if I could continue living in this situation. That shadow seemed to have become a part of space, and I couldn't deny that I had let it take over my mind. The following days felt empty, as if I were living in a loop, where every movement was tracked, every step had that shadow hovering beside me. But I have no choice but to continue living in it. The air gradually became a thick layer, the stuffy air enveloped me. My body felt imprisoned in fear, and each step was heavy and prolonged, like an effort to resist an invisible force, a force that wanted to hold me back. The shadow still stood there, not moving, only its hat swaying slightly in the wind, as if it was daring me to come closer. The feeling of tension continued to increase in my chest. I felt like my heart was about to jump out of my chest, my breathing became panting and heavy. My legs suddenly felt numb, as if I was moving in a frozen space with no way out. I wanted to turn around and run, but I couldn't. My eyes couldn't leave that figure. It still stood silently, but I knew that silence could be dangerous. I realized that if I didn't act now, I might be stuck in this terrifying silence forever. However, no matter how hard I tried to open my mouth, I couldn't make a single sound. That shadow still stood there, its eyes blurred, and the hat's slow movements only seemed to make my fear more intense. While I stood quietly facing that figure, a cold wind suddenly blew past, making me shiver. The air became thick, as if time had stopped, and I felt like I was being pulled into an invisible black hole, unable to escape. I wanted to run away, but that presence, that shadow, occupied every space, every thought. Now, I can't escape the feeling of being watched. The shadows around me seemed to be moving, but not in a natural way. They seemed to be waiting for something, and I knew that when I turned my back, I would probably see them coming closer. But part of me knew I couldn't run away. It has followed me, and I feel it in every step, every breath, every moment of my life. The wind began to blow stronger again, as if it carried an invisible threat, rustling the fallen leaves on the ground. That noise made my footsteps sound louder, deafening in the silence of this park. I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched, even though I couldn't see anyone. I stopped for a second to catch my breath, but when I looked up, the light from the sky had changed, becoming dim and gray, as if the darkness was swallowing all the remaining light. Even though I was moving faster, I couldn't escape the feeling of being held back, as if this park had a force pulling me back. Every step I took became heavier, and no matter how hard I tried, I felt like everything around me was shrinking, the shadows of the trees stretching out and wrapping around me, making the space even more cramped. The winds kept blowing, as if they were twisting the air, forcing me into a narrow crevice from which I could not escape. As I continued walking, my eyes began to vaguely see the silhouette again, flickering among the foliage. A slight shift in the darkness frightened me, and when I turned around, I saw that the shadow seemed to be following me, waiting for me to enter its field of vision. A feeling of suffocation rose within me again. I wanted to turn back, run as fast as I could, but something inside me insisted that I must continue, that only that way could I find liberation. But every time I turned around, that shadow appeared again, closer, clearer. No matter what I did, it stood there, silent and motionless. It was as if it was waiting for me, waiting for a choice, a decision that I couldn't make. The images in my mind began to fade, and the feeling of being held back became more and more apparent. My lips were dry, each breath became difficult. I don't know what to do anymore. When I look at the shadows of the trees around me, I don't just see trees anymore. I saw the branches stretching out like hands, gently beckoning me to come closer. I tried to convince myself that it was all just paranoia, but the feeling was too real, too intense. That shadow was not a product of imagination. It's really there, and it's closer to me than ever before. I could feel its movement, the wriggling of that shadow in the air, and my fear grew even greater. I wonder, can I escape it? Or will I have to face it again, like I did so many times in my nightmare? But a part of me knows, no matter what I do, I won't be able to escape that shadow, the shadow that always lurks in my sight, always there, quietly and waiting. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, its sound echoing through the rushing wind around me. My legs were slow, tired and heavy, but even so, I couldn't stop moving. That shadow was still present, like a nightmare slowly enveloping me, overwhelming all conscious thoughts. It seemed like everything around me was changing, as if the space was deforming little by little. The sky was no longer the soft purple of sunset, but instead was a gloomy gray-black, heavy as if something invisible was pressing on everything. It feels like I'm stuck in a space where both time and space no longer exist as usual. I came close to the edge of the small pond, where the water was murky and algae clung to the surface. Fallen leaves flowed above the water, creating small dents that constantly ripple. Right now, I want to just hide in the dark, but I can't. That shadow was still there, watching me, waiting for me to do something. My feet felt glued to the ground, but part of me couldn't stop. My every step echoed strangely, as if I were walking on hard ground, even though I clearly knew that I was walking on a soft park trail. I convinced myself that it was just an illusion, a play of light and shadow, but reason could not escape the feeling of fear. The sound of birds chirping sounded again, but the sound was no longer sweet and natural. It distorted, as if being stretched through a tunnel, then suddenly stopped, leaving only terrifying silence. A cold breeze swept across my body, bringing a numb feeling down my spine. Every step I took made me feel the air around me become heavier, as if something invisible was pressing down on me. Looking over again, I saw the shadows of the trees, no longer the gentle shapes of nature. Everything was distorted now, as if they were being swallowed by darkness. And that shadow, it still stood there, like a dot in empty space, waiting for me. Despite everything, I kept walking. I know that there is no other choice. When I turned around, I saw that shadow again. It didn't move, but got closer, as if it was approaching me from behind, silent and invisible, existing only for a moment. Silence prevailed, there was no sound other than the sound of my footsteps echoing in the vast space. But then, when I turned around, it was gone. There was no trace, no sign that the shadow was still here. However, I couldn't get rid of the cold feeling in my body. At that moment, I realized something that I didn't want to admit. That shadow wasn't just an illusion. It had been there all along, always lurking in my sight. And I can't avoid it. That feeling, that eternal presence, will never leave. The feeling of fear still haunts me every time I think about those nights, those moments when I couldn't understand that strange presence, as if it had marked me somehow. I can't erase the image of those shining eyes, eyes that I know will always be waiting for me, no matter how hard I try to run away. Those brief moments in the park left me feeling forced into a dark corner of my mind. As I continued to live in this city, I tried to act as if nothing had happened, as if I had never felt its presence clinging to me, even though I knew full well that that was not the case. Every time I look into the mirror, I feel like its eyes are still staring at me. Every once in a while, I see its silhouette somewhere in my peripheral vision, even if it's just for a brief moment, but it's enough to make me panic. It is a type of fear that cannot be named, it never leaves me, it is inseparable from my ordinary days. The sounds of the darkness, the distorted chirping of birds in the wind, or the blurry images I saw, they were not things I could ignore easily. They haunt me in the quiet nights and in the daytime hours. I didn't go back to the park, I didn't dare step into it again. But I also know, no matter how hard I try to stay away, that presence will not let me go. It was there, in the memories, in the feelings, in the fleeting shadows that I couldn't explain. Those bright eyes, that figure, will always follow me. And I also know that, once I see it, a part of me will always look for it, whether I want it or not. Well, I realized that that presence was not just something external, but also a part of me. Every time I look in the mirror, every time I hear strange sounds in the night, I know, in some way, I have it with me. Not just because I saw it once, but because I let it invade my mind, letting it exist in every breath, in every fear I felt. As time passed, I gradually learned to live with that truth, that some things cannot be explained, some fears cannot be dispelled. I learned to accept that not everything we see is real, and not everything we feel can be explained. And maybe, sometimes, the things that seem like nightmares are parts of ourselves that we never want to face. I no longer stare into the mirror every time I feel that presence, but I know that it is still there, hidden in moments of silence. And maybe, that's what I have to learn to live with, not to be afraid, but to accept that in the dark, sometimes there are things that never leave us. And so the story ends. The shadowy figures, the glowing eyes, that shadow wearing the wide-brimmed hat, all have become a part of me, inseparable. Even though I can never understand what I went through, I no longer want to explain it. Because sometimes, living with a mystery is the only way for us to maintain peace of mind.